Chapter 603. Great Show. Hanyang County. Hanyang County was a county on the southern coast of Great Show. It was far away from the power, economic, and political centers of Great Show. There were not many people in the county, but there were many cultivation sections. There were no major Buddhist sects here, but there were many mountains with abundant spirit chi. It was very popular among itinerant cultivators and small sections. There were more than 100 cultivator sects registered by the Hanyang County government alone. The number of people in these sects ranged from a few to more than a dozen. The largest had about 100 people, while the smallest only had a master and a disciple, each with a single disciple. As the outer sect of Fulu School, the Spirit Seal sect was one of the top 5 sects in Hanyang County. In the past few days, it had been in the limelight. The cause of the matter was that the Spirit Seal sect had recruited a genius disciple a few days ago. This disciple had a rare pure yang body. The Spirit Seal sect held a banquet to celebrate this matter. A pure yang body was a rare cultivation body. After embarking on the path of cultivation, one's cultivation would naturally progress faster than others, and it would be easier for them to break through to higher realms. It was very popular among the major sections. It could be said that as long as this disciple worked a little harder on cultivation, there was a high chance that he would become a famous figure in the cultivation world in the future. The sect master of the Spirit Seal sect was overjoyed to have such a good disciple. In less than 3 days, this matter was known by everyone in Hanyang County, and it became a topic of conversation among the local cultivators. It's just a disciple. What's there to be proud of? The sect master of the Spirit Seal sect can't wait to let the whole world know. It's easy for you to say. This is a pure yang body. If I had a disciple with a pure yang body, I would be even more proud than the sect master of the Spirit Seal sect. The banquet would take at least half a month. Some people are born to cultivate. How enviable. The Spirit Seal sect is also lucky. The sect has a bright future. This kind of person will soon be recruited into the ancestral court of Fulu School. The status of the Spirit Seal sect will probably rise in the future. While the entire cultivation world of Hanyang County was discussing this matter, Li Mu waited silently in a room within the Spirit Seal sect. Yi had said that the closer one was to the south, the stronger the demonic path's influence would be and the more spies they would have. For thousands of years, the demonic path had never stopped searching for geniuses with special constitutions. After all, the memories of those demonic path powerhouses could be inherited. But one's cultivation talent depended on the host that inherited the memories. Even the cleverest housewife could not cook without rice. If he randomly found a person to accept the memories, even if he had the experience of these old monsters later on, if he did not have a high cultivation talent and was limited by his physical condition, his achievements would still not be too high. Therefore, the demonic path had extremely high requirements for the host that carried the memories of powerhouses. They would find many geniuses and gather them on the Ghost Island, providing them with unlimited cultivation resources. Only the most outstanding among them had the qualifications to carry the memories of powerhouses. A pure yang body was a special physique. Once they received news about it, the Devil Dao people would never let it go. Every time they found a special physique, they would receive generous rewards. Li Mu had already asked the head of the Spirit Seal sect to spread the news for several days. Hanyang County was filled with spies of the demonic path. This news would definitely reach the ears of the demonic path powerhouses. It was late at night. Li Mu sat cross-legged on the bed and silently closed his eyes to cultivate. After midnight, the candlelight in the room suddenly swayed. Streaks of black gas rushed in through the crack in the door. Finally, a black shadow with the outline of a human figure condensed in the room. 2 balls of red light flickered where the black shadow's eyes should be. After studying Li Mu for a while, they turned into black gas again and wrapped around Li Mu. Then, they disappeared into thin air from the room. Outside the Spirit Seal sect, a young man was wrapped in black fog and was moving quickly in the night. He had already woken up from his cultivation and was extremely panicked. "Who are you? What do you want?" A gloomy voice came from the black fog. "Don't worry, I won't hurt you. I'm just taking you to a place." He injected a streak of black gas into the young man's body and the young man fainted. He took the young man all the way to the south and soon flew to the seaside. Then, the black fog turned into a man in a black robe. He held the unconscious young man in one hand and took out a token from his waist with the other. His entire body turned into a stream of light and sped into the depths of the South Sea. What he did not know was that ever since he left the Spirit Seal sect, an old man had been following him and watching him silently. It was not until the sky was bright and the disciples of the Spirit Seal sect were preparing for the morning class that they realized that the new genius disciple of the sect master had not appeared. Everyone searched the entire sect but could not find any trace of him. Not long after, the cultivation world of Hanyang County received the news that the genius with the pure young body of the Spirit Seal sect had gone missing. For a time, the cultivation world had different opinions about this. How could a living person go missing? Could it be that some powerhouse took him away? Who wouldn't want to take such a genius as a disciple? I don't know how the sect master of the Spirit Seal sect is feeling now. If he did not make such a big fuss and kept a low profile, perhaps his precious disciple would not have gone missing. The sect master of the Spirit Seal sect became a joke in the cultivation world of Hanyang County. The disappearance of the pure young body also became an unsolved mystery for the cultivators of Hanyang County for a long time. At the same time, in the depths of the South Sea, in an unknown sea, dark clouds covered the surface of the ocean, and strong winds stirred up waves that were hundreds of feet high. Thunderbolts could be seen exploding between the dark clouds and the surface of the ocean. Not only were human merchant ships unable to approach this place, even cultivators with profound cultivation base would have to take a detour if they saw this place. Even in such a dangerous place, there was still a black shadow walking leisurely in it. He carried a young man and shuttled through the thunderbolts and storms. Soon, he arrived at an island shrouded in black fog. After passing through the black fog, what came into view was an island full of vitality. In the center of the island, there was a tall tower. Countless palace-like buildings were scattered around the tower. Fifth Elder. Greetings, Fifth Elder. There were figures flying around the island. When they saw the black-clothed man, they all stopped and bowed. The black-clothed man flew to the front of a palace. Another person walked out of the palace. That person looked at the young man in the black-clothed man's hand and smiled. Fifth Elder, what did you find this time? The black-clothed man said, I was lucky this time. I found a pure young body. That person also looked happy. He said, a pure young body. I haven't seen one in a long time. Congratulations, Fifth Elder. However, before that, I still have to check if he has a pure young body. The black-clothed man nodded and said, of course. The man walked into the palace and came out not long after. He was holding a spirit jade in his hand. There were a few runes carved on the spirit jade. The young man was still unconscious. The man in black placed the spirit jade in his hand and controlled his fist to hold the spirit jade. In the next moment, the spiritual energy in the spiritual jade suddenly rushed into the young man's body. In a few breaths, the spiritual jade in his hand turned into a pile of powder. That person smiled and said, thank you, Fifth Elder. He really does have a pure young body. You can leave him to me. I will report this to the third ancestor. Not long after, the black-clothed man left the palace. The middle-aged man wearing a black robe with a lotus pattern on his chest sent a stream of spiritual energy into the young man's body. The young man's eyelashes trembled, and then he slowly woke up. Then, an extremely frightened expression appeared on his face. He said in a trembling voice, who are you people? Where is this place? Why did you bring me here? The middle-aged man was already used to this kind of panicked expression. Every genius who was brought here for the first time would have this kind of expression. He smiled and said, you should know that you have a rare pure young body. You are one of the few cultivation geniuses. We brought you here because we want you to join us. The young man immediately said, I already have a sect. I am an outer disciple of the Fulu school. The Fulu school is one of the 6 Daoist sections. Aren't you afraid that the Fulu school will come after you for doing this? Hearing the Fulu school, the middle-aged man's face showed disdain. He said, the Fulu school is nothing. The sage sect is much stronger than them. What the Fulu school can give you, the sage sect can give you. What the Fulu school can't give you, the sage sect can give you. What you need to do is to cultivate well and raise your cultivation as soon as possible. The young man said in shock, the sage sect. You are from the demon sect. The middle-aged man said indifferently, what righteous demon sect? That's just an ignorant name. Those who call themselves righteous sects may not be clean in the dark. The young man seemed to be very repulsed by the demon sect. He said firmly, I will not join the demon sect even if I die. The middle-aged man was no longer surprised by his reaction. Countless people who had been brought here had said similar things, but it didn't take long before they changed their minds. He stretched out his right hand and a ball of flame appeared in his palm. The flame was gray and seemed to have no temperature, but one's soul could feel a deep chill. The middle-aged man looked at the gray flame and explained, "This is soul fire. It doesn't hurt the body, but it can burn the soul. As long as this flame is sent into your body, you will feel the pain of your soul burning. I don't know how long you can last. 10 breaths, 10 minutes, or 15 minutes. The young man hesitated for a moment and said, "This is a threat." The middle-aged man smiled and said, "This is a threat." The young man looked at him and took a deep breath. He said, "Master said that cultivators must have pride. Even if I die, I can't be threatened by you demon sect people." The middle-aged man said indifferently, "So you want to try?" The young man shook his head and said, "I have never listened to Master." The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment, then his eyes became playful. He asked, "You mean you are willing to join the demon sect?" The young man looked at the middle-aged man and said seriously, "What demon sect?" "It's the Sage sect. From now on, I am a member of the Sage sect. Junior greets the Sage sect Senior." Chapter 604. Ha ha ha. The middle-aged man laughed, then patted Li Mu's shoulder. "It's been a long time since I've met such an interesting junior. What's your name? This seat admires you very much." Li Mu embarrassedly said, replying to Senior, "This one is Li Si." The middle-aged man beckoned to a servant and said, "Bring Li Si to Earth Summit and choose a dwelling." Li Mu followed the servant and left the main hall, flying towards a mountain peak in the distance. In order to not be discovered, Li Mu sealed the majority of his cultivation within his body. As one of the main altars of the demonic path, Ghost Island had countless experts. He did not dare to release his divine sense to explore. If he was discovered by some old monster, this operation could only be declared a failure. A moment later, Li Mu was brought to a mountain peak by the servant. This mountain was rich in spiritual qi. There were many palace-like buildings on the peak, and at the very front was a large square. Many people were sparring in the square, and when they saw someone flying over, they all looked over. Another newcomer. I wonder what sort of monster it is this time. Although his cultivation is only at the 4th realm, he's from Earth Summit. His cultivation talent must not be bad. It looks like we'll have another competitor in the future. It's not just one. A few days ago, the woman that Lord Fifth Ancestor personally brought back was actually living in First Hall. I wonder what sort of ability she has to be valued so highly by Lord Fifth Ancestor. Li Mu had already learned from the servant who brought him here that the mountain peaks on the island were divided into 4 grades according to the abundance of spirit qi: heaven, earth, profound, and yellow. Among them, the heaven peak was where the Elders Immortals' cave residences were located. For a newcomer to be arranged at the earth peak, it was already considered very generous treatment. His gaze swept over the several figures in the square. These people were not very old, about the same age as him. However, the weakest of them was already at the peak of the 4th realm, and there were even some whose auras were no weaker than the 5th realm elders of the Fulu school. If any of these people were placed outside, they would be no weaker than the core disciples of the various large sections. In fact, they might even surpass them. No wonder the demonic path was able to dominate the continent for thousands of years. They had kidnapped a massive number of cultivation geniuses to ensure a steady stream of new blood. The servant led Li Mu through the main hall and came to a Dao palace. He said, "This is where you will be cultivating. Someone will bring you the cultivation resources you need later." With that, the servant bowed to Li Mu and turned to leave. Li Mu held a token in his hand. When he walked into the Dao palace, the token flashed and the doors to the Dao palace opened automatically. Li Mu walked in and found that the interior of the Dao palace was an exquisite little courtyard. There was a garden, a fountain, a fake mountain, and a pond. There was everything one could think of. Cultivating here would make one feel very happy. In addition, the spiritual energy inside the Dao palace was many times denser than outside. Cultivating here for a day was equivalent to cultivating outside for half a month. If one had enough spiritual jades, one's cultivation speed would be even faster. There was no doubt that there was a large-scale spirit gathering formation under the mountain. Maintaining this spirit-gathering formation required a huge amount of spiritual jades. In order to quickly raise the cultivation of these geniuses, the demonic path had spent a lot of money. The geniuses outside thought that the demonic path had taken a fancy to their talent. Little did they know that the demonic path had taken a fancy to their bodies. The higher their talent, the faster their cultivation would break through, and the closer they would be to death. Li Mu sat cross-legged on a prayer mat in the courtyard, calculating the next step of his plan. He had originally wanted to take advantage of the 3 days the demonic path's 3 ancestors were avoiding tribulation to sneak into Ghost Island and find Princess Linglong of Yong and escape with her. However, his plan had gone awry. The demonic path's 5th elder had appeared later than he had expected. Today was the 2nd day the demonic path's 3 ancestors were avoiding tribulation. After tomorrow, he would come out of seclusion. He would have to wait another month for his next opportunity. When he was outside, Li Mu had inadvertently heard news of Princess Linglong. She was in the first Earth Hall, which was also within the mountain. He had to find a way to get in touch with her. Li Mu stayed in the courtyard for a while before someone from the demon sect delivered spiritual jades to him. There were several dozen pieces of spiritual jades, all of which were high-grade. He hadn't even made any contributions to the demon sect, yet he was able to receive resources that not even the core disciples of large sects could easily obtain. It seemed that the demon sect was simply raising these geniuses like pigs. They didn't need to do anything other than cultivate. When the time was right, they would be greeted with a blade. After accepting the spiritual jades, Li Mu went outside. There were still many people sparring in the courtyard. A youth in his early 20s walked over and asked Li Mu, "Newcomer, what is your name and where are you from?" Li Mu revealed a good-natured smile and replied, "Li Si, from the Great Zhou, Hanyang County." The youth also took the initiative to introduce himself. "My name is Jiang Zhua, from the state of Liang." After a simple introduction, the youth asked again, "You've just arrived and you've already moved into the Earth Hall. What is your constitution?" Li Mu replied, "Pure Yang." The youth's face revealed a look of realization. He said, "I see. This kind of constitution is rare. No wonder you can cultivate in the 9th hall." Li Mu pretended to be curious and asked, "What 9th hall? Is there a saying?" The youth said, "Of course there is. You just arrived and didn't know. The rarer the constitution, the higher the Tao Palace, and the more abundant the spiritual energy. Of course, if your cultivation speed is fast enough, you are also qualified to cultivate in the Tao Palaces in front." Li Mu was naturally aware of this. The demon sect chose powerful cultivators to host their memories with the same constitution. This way, after the memories were passed on, they would be able to familiarize themselves with their new body in the shortest amount of time. He looked at the Tao Palace in front and asked, "The person living in the first Tao Palace must have the rarest constitution, or the strongest person, right?" The youth shook his head and said, "I don't know. She just arrived here 10 days ago and has never left. No one knows where she came from. We are also curious." As the two of them were talking, a few figures suddenly descended from the sky. When the people in the square saw this, they all stopped fighting. After standing still, they respectfully said, "Greetings, 5th forefather, elders." Li Mu also followed their example and bowed. When the woman in white with a face like an iceberg walked towards the Tao Palace in front, she suddenly stopped and looked at a figure in the crowd. She said lightly, "Raise your head." In the crowd, a young man raised his head. He looked a little nervous and said respectfully, "Greetings, 5th forefather." Before the woman in white could speak, the middle-aged man that Li Mu met in the hall took the initiative to explain, "5th forefather, this person was just brought in by the 5th elder today. He is a genius with a pure young body." The woman in white glanced at Li Mu and did not ask any more questions. She turned and walked into the Tao Palace. Li Mu looked nervous, but he was more nervous than he looked. He used a secret technique from the heavenly book to seal his cultivation. Even his aura was changed. In theory, unless the 3 forefathers of the demonic way directly checked his body, no one on the demonic island could see through his cultivation. However, he could not rule out the possibility that Xian Ming had fought with him and might be able to sense something. Only when she turned her head did Li Mu secretly breathe a sigh of relief. Xian Ming and the others walked into the Tao Palace where Princess Linglong was. In less than a quarter of an hour, they came out again. She stood at the entrance of the Tao Palace and said to the middle-aged man, "I will give you 3 more days. After 3 days, if she still does not agree, you will receive your punishment. The middle-aged man said respectfully, "Understood." It was not until Xian Ming left that he showed a worried expression. At this time, Li Mu came up and asked in a low voice, "Senior, who lives in there?" The middle-aged man looked at Li Mu and sighed, "If only everyone was as sensible as you." Li Mu could roughly guess that this elder of the demonic way was in charge of the newcomers who had just entered the sect. This included the examination of aptitude and persuasion of those who were stubborn and unwilling to submit. Li Mu continued to ask, "The people in there, are they unwilling to submit to the sage sect?" The middle-aged man breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It has been half a month. That woman's temper is really more stubborn than a stone." Li Mu thought for a moment and asked, "Senior, do you want me to persuade her?" The middle-aged man glanced at him. "You?" Li Mu said confidently, "I don't have any other skills, but when it comes to coaxing women, I have never been convinced by anyone. As long as it is a woman, no matter if it is a pure young girl or a passionate young woman, I have a way to deal with them." This pure young body was indeed different from the other newcomers he had seen. He was smart and sensible. Perhaps he could really solve this problem for him. The middle-aged man looked at Li Mu with bright eyes and said, "If you can make her submit to the sage sect, I will use my own resources to help you reach the 5th realm. Senior, you can rest assured that I will handle it." Li Mu smiled and walked towards Dao Palace No. 1 as he said, "Just wait for my good news." Chapter 605. After walking a few steps, Li Mu walked back and asked the middle-aged man, "Elder, what is the background of the woman inside? Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win 100 battles. Junior needs to understand her identity." The middle-aged man nodded and said, "She is the Princess of Yong. She has a special constitution that is of great use to the sage sect." A moment later, under the gaze of the elder, Li Mu strode into the palace at the very front with his head held high. The doors to the palace were tightly shut. Li Mu glanced back. The elder waved his sleeve, and the doors slowly opened. Li Mu walked into the palace and looked back again. The elder hesitated for a moment, then waved his sleeve again, and the heavy stone doors slowly closed. He patiently waited in the plaza. Regardless of whether Li Si planned to persuade her or sleep with her, as long as he could make her agree to work for the sage sect, he did not care about the process. After the stone doors closed, Li Mu gazed ahead. This was a courtyard that was even more spacious than the place where he cultivated. The decorations and furnishings within the courtyard were more abundant and exquisite. There was a pavilion in the middle of the courtyard, with a carved stone table and a stone bench. A woman sat on the bench, her back facing Li Mu. As Li Mu approached her, he slowly said, "Miss, you are under someone else's roof. Why bother?" The woman did not even glance at Li Mu, coldly replying, "I will not wallow in the mire with the devil's sect. You don't need to waste your breath. Get out. This place does not welcome anyone." Li Mu coldly snorted and said, "Do you think you are still the Princess of Yong? Let me tell you, this is the sage sect's territory. If you are unwilling to submit to the sage sect, you will suffer in the future. Do you know what it feels like to have your soul burned?" As he spoke, Li Mu had already walked into the pavilion and placed a hand on the woman's shoulder. The woman's body trembled, and her magic leaked out. She angrily said, "What are you doing? Don't touch me." However, in the next moment, her expression froze as a voice rang out in her mind. "Listen, I'm an official of the Great Zhou. This time, I'm here on the orders of the Empress of the Great Zhou to rescue you from Ghost Island. From now on, pretend that you don't know my identity. Don't reveal any flaws. I'll come find you again." As these words rang in her mind, Princess Linglong's beautiful eyes widened. Soon after, her face regained its coldness and said without fear, "Cut the crap. If you want to kill me, then kill me. If you want to torture me, then torture me." Li Mu revealed a gratified look. This Princess Linglong indeed had an exquisite heart. Although there were still some flaws in her acting, there were only the two of them here, and no one else could see it. That demonic path elder was definitely paying attention to this place. Now was not the right time to explain everything to her. Li Mu took his hand off her shoulder and said, "I'll give you one more day to think about it. After one day, if you still don't submit to the holy sect, I'll let you have a taste of my means." With that, he strode out of the palace. In the plaza, the ninth elder asked him, How is it? Li Mu shook his head and said, dripping water can wear a stone. It's not the work of a day. Elder, don't worry. Within 3 days, I'll definitely convince her to change her mind and have her wholeheartedly swear loyalty to the holy sect. As this matter concerned him, the ninth elder was not at ease. He continued to ask, how do you plan on convincing her? Li Mu replied, first I'll use the hard approach, then I'll use the soft approach. The ninth elder pursued, how do you plan on using the hard approach first, then the soft approach? Li Mu thought for a moment then said, since she's not afraid of death, then we'll use her family to threaten her. Tell her that if she doesn't agree, we'll exterminate her young imperial family. The ninth elder revealed a disappointed expression. If this kind of threat was effective against her, would it even be your turn? Li Mu thought for a moment then said, then I'll use the soft approach. I can use my male charms to seduce her. Once she falls in love with me, she'll be at my mercy. Naturally, she'll pledge allegiance to the holy sect with a single word from me. The ninth elder glanced at him and rudely said, who do you think you are to make a princess fall in love with you in 3 days? Li Mu proudly said, I have confidence in myself. If I use my full strength, I can easily capture the Empress of the Great Zhou, the Queen of 10,000 Demons, or even the Ghost Lord of the Ghost Realm, let alone a trifling princess of Yong. The ninth elder took a deep breath and said, I hope you have the ability. I'll wait for your good news. The ninth elder was at his wit's end when it came to the Yong princess. The third ancestor had said that he couldn't use torture on her, or else he would destroy her 7 orifices exquisite heart. However, if he didn't use torture, he didn't have any good ideas. At this moment, he could only try everything he could and place his hopes on the person in front of him. Although he was full of arrogant words, it couldn't be denied that he was handsome. Perhaps he really did have a glimmer of hope. As for his talk of capturing the Empress of the Great Zhou, the Queen of 10,000 Demons, and the Ghost Lord, the ninth elder only treated it as a joke. Who did he think he was? The continent's #1 Xiao by face, the Great Zhou's powerful minister, Li Mu? The ninth elder gave Li Mu 3 days to convince Princess Linglong. He also gave Li Mu a command medallion that could open the stone door to the Dao Palace she resided in. Li Mu didn't appear to be in a rush. After sleeping peacefully for the night, he once again headed for Dao Palace #1. At this moment, Princess Linglong, who hadn't slept the entire night, was sitting in a pavilion within the Dao Palace's courtyard. She appeared somewhat haggard. Half a month ago, that white-clothed woman had descended upon the Yong kingdom. Her father, grandfather, and great-grandfather had all been defeated by her. Yong's heavenly tomes had been stolen, and she had been captured and brought here. She had been surrounded by demonic cultivators. She had tried to escape several times, but every time, she had been captured before she could leave this mountain peak. It was absolutely impossible for her to pledge allegiance to the demonic cultivators and decipher the heavenly tomes for them. After running out of hope, she thought of committing suicide. As long as she died, the demonic cultivators would no longer be able to force her. However, just as she had made this decision in her despair, the Great Zhou official who had infiltrated this place gave her hope. Although the Great Zhou was the sovereign state of the Yong kingdom, Princess Linglong hadn't expected that the Great Zhou would actually send someone to infiltrate this place for her sake. After being here for half a month, she already knew that there were countless experts here. Not only was there that terrifying white-clothed woman, there were also 8th-level experts. Even if the Empress of the Great Zhou came here, she probably wouldn't be able to rescue her. Compared to having another person die in vain, she would much rather have that Great Zhou official never come here. Rumble. The stone doors of the Dao Palace slowly opened and then slowly closed. The young man who had been here yesterday once again appeared before her eyes. As Li Mu walked towards Princess Linglong, he asked, "A day has already passed. What's wrong? Have you thought it through?" Princess Linglong's voice was still cold. "Even if I die, I won't do anything for the demonic cultivators." Li Mu walked in front of her and shook his head. "You're such a beautiful young lady. It would be a pity if you died. Think about it again." As he spoke, he extended his hand towards Princess Linglong. Princess Linglong immediately understood and extended her small hand to hold Li Mu's hand. This way, the two of them could directly transmit their voices through their bodies and not be heard by anyone else. Princess Linglong transmitted her voice with some uncertainty. "Sir, are you really an official of the Great Zhou?" Li Mu replied. Other than the officials of the great show, who else would come to save you? I know everything that happened in the state of Yong. This time I've come to save you. Princess Linglong took a deep breath and continued transmitting her voice. This place is filled with experts of the demonic cultivators. You can't save me. You'll only throw your life away. This young lady clearly didn't believe in his strength. Li Mu shot a glance at her and asked, "Then I'll leave." The faint light in Princess Linglong's eyes dimmed. She nodded and said, "You can leave. If you can return alive, can you make a trip to the state of Yong and tell father and grandfather that Linglong didn't do anything to let them down?" Li Mu said indifferently. "Since I'm already here, I, Li Mu, am not someone who gives up halfway." Princess Linglong suddenly raised her head, her eyes radiating light. She said in disbelief, "Sir, you are Li Mu, Lord Li?" Li Mu looked at her and asked, "You know of me?" Princess Linglong immediately replied, "Of course. Who doesn't know of Lord Li? He helped the Empress pacify the Great Zhou, dealt a heavy blow to the demonic cultivators, established an alliance with the Yao state and the Ghost Realm, and established the peace of the Zhou continent for thousands of years. Many of the officials of the state of Yong view him as a role model." When Princess Linglong spoke of these things, her eyes were filled with light. Li Mu didn't expect that the person he wanted to save would be his own little fangirl. Even though he was thick-skinned, he still felt somewhat embarrassed and said, "You flatter me, you flatter me." Princess Linglong's hand, which was holding onto Li Mu, trembled. She nervously asked, "Sir, are you really Lord Li?" Li Mu nodded and said, "Because I had to sneak into the Ghost Island to save you, I changed my appearance." Princess Linglong's face was filled with anticipation. She asked, "Lord Li, can I ask you a question?" Li Mu knew what she was worried about and said, "Don't worry. I said that I would save you, so I will definitely save you." Princess Linglong shook her head and said, "I want to ask you, are you and Her Majesty really lovers?" Chapter 606. Li Mu thought that Princess Linglong wanted to ask him some questions. He did not expect that she was not only his fan, but also his and the Empress's CP fan. Looking at her expectant eyes, Li Mu nodded and said, "Yes. That's great. I knew it." Princess Linglong's eyes lit up, and then she asked, "Then the rumors say that you and the Queen of Demons?" Li Mu coughed and said, "That's not a rumor." "So, you're really the Empress of the Demon Kingdom?" This? Princess Linglong seemed to have confirmed it, and continued to ask, "Then the Lord of the Ghost Realm must be your lover, right?" This was something that even Phantom Princess did not know. Li Mu was shocked. "You know this too?" Princess Linglong said embarrassedly, "It's just my guess. The Great Zhou has never formed an alliance with the Ghost Realm before. This is the first time in history. I think that other than you, no one else has this ability. Coincidentally, you were not in the Immortals' capital at that time, and the Lord of the Ghost Realm was a woman." Hearing Princess Linglong's reasoning, Li Mu was speechless. Finally, he could not help but ask, "Even if the Lord of the Ghost Realm is a woman, does that mean that she must be my lover?" Princess Linglong stuck out her tongue and said, "Didn't I guess it right?" Li Mu had to admit that the heart of 7 orifices was indeed the heart of 7 orifices. Her guess was really accurate. This gossip fan of the Yong Kingdom knew him better than he knew himself. Li Mu waved his hand and said, "All right, the most important thing now is to get you out of here." Princess Linglong calmed down and asked worriedly, "This place is so heavily guarded, and there are experts like the woman in white. How are we going to leave this place?" "You don't have to worry about that. Since I can come here, I have a way to get you out of here." Li Mu comforted her, and then changed the topic saying, "But it was not easy for us to sneak into the demonic path. If we just leave like this, it would be a pity. Do you want to do something big with me?" Princess Linglong raised her head to look at him and asked, "How?" A strange smile appeared on Li Mu's face as he sent a message to Princess Linglong. Not long after, Princess Linglong's eyes flashed with a sly light. Li Mu had been looking forward to the Demonic Path High Command for a long time. They wanted the heavenly book in Li Mu's hands. How could Li Mu not want theirs? This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The demonic Dao had collected the heavenly book for 10,000 years, and they would definitely not show it to anyone easily, unless this person could help them decipher it. And if they wanted Princess Linglong to decipher the heavenly book for them, they would first have to hand it over to her. Handing it over to her was equivalent to handing it over to Li Mu. As long as the heavenly book was in Li Mu's hands, it would be impossible for the demon sect to take it back. Li Mu stayed for a while longer before returning to his residence. Not long after, the ninth elder of the demon sect came uninvited. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he asked directly, "How was it?" Li Mu's face revealed a look of confidence as he said, "Although she hasn't done so yet, I think by tomorrow at the latest, she will definitely give in." The ninth elder thought for a while and asked, "You slept with her?" "Not yet," Li Mu explained. "I only threatened her. If she didn't agree to work for the sage sect, I would sleep with her tomorrow. She would rather die than give in, saying that she would commit suicide if that happened. I said that even if she became a ghost, I could still sleep with her. I would even refine her body into a spiritual corpse so that I could sleep with two of her." She seemed to be a little scared. The ninth elder looked at Li Mu in shock. Even he did not expect that Li Si could be so cruel. After being humiliated in life, there would be no peace after death. Even if he was an elder of the demonic path, he felt that this was too cruel. He looked straight at Li Mu and said meaningfully, "You little brat, you really were born to be a member of the sage sect." Li Mu sighed in his heart. He had no other choice. Princess Linglong was such an unyielding woman. If he could persuade her with just a few words, the demon sect would definitely suspect that they were colluding. He could only try his best to pretend that he was a pervert to dispel their suspicions. For cultivators, the death of their physical body was not the end. Instead, it was the beginning of a great fear. Any cultivator could understand this fear. The next morning, the ninth elder came to Li Mu's courtyard again. His face was full of smiles as he said, "She has already agreed to work for the sage sect. You really are something." Li Mu said embarrassedly, "Thank you for the praise, ninth elder. You promised me." The ninth elder waved his sleeve and a bottle of pills flew over. Li Mu reached out and caught it. The ninth elder's face showed some pain as he said, "This bottle of pills was originally prepared by me to increase my mana. For you, I refined it again and diluted the medicinal power. Take one pill every day and use it carefully. If there are no accidents, you will be able to break through to the 5th level in a month." Li Mu pretended to be ecstatic and said, "Thank you, ninth elder." The ninth elder waved his hand and said, "Let's put the matter of the pills aside for now. Come with me." Li Mu asked, "Where to?" The ninth elder looked at him and smiled meaningfully. He said, "Princess Linglong has agreed to work for the sage sect. However, there is one condition. You must accompany her for a month." Li Mu heard this and his face changed. He immediately said, "Ninth elder, this can't be. This can't be. I said a lot of things to her yesterday. She will kill me." The ninth elder shook his head and said, "Don't worry. At most you will suffer a little. You won't die." Li Mu shook his head again and again. His voice was trembling. "Ninth elder, you can't do this. I have contributed to the sage sect. I have contributed to the sage sect." The ninth elder said helplessly, "This is the order of the 5th elder. No one can go against it. You should come with me." After saying this, he put his hand on Li Mu's shoulder. The two of them disappeared and reappeared in the square outside. In the square, Princess Linglong was already standing there. She held a long whip in her hand and stared at Li Mu. Her eyes were burning with humiliation. The ninth elder looked at Li Mu with pity and said, "You may suffer a little. Bear with it and it will be over. The sage sect will compensate you in the future." After saying that, he gently raised his hand and Li Mu flew towards Princess Linglong involuntarily. Whoosh! The long whip in Princess Linglong's hand was swung over without hesitation. A whip mark appeared on Li Mu's clothes. After that, she shook her hand slightly and the sky was filled with whip shadows. They all landed on Li Mu. On the Earth Peak, many of the demon sect's geniuses saw this scene and could not help but shiver. What's going on? Fighting is forbidden on the island. Why doesn't the ninth elder do anything? Where did this girl come from? How can she not follow the sect's rules? This girl is not to be trifled with. I must stay away from her in the future. Seeing that the new genius was being beaten up by this girl alone, none of the elders stepped forward. The rest of the people felt a chill in their hearts. They had already listed her as an existence not to be trifled with. Only a few elders knew the inside story. This kid looked handsome and elegant, but his thoughts were cruel and perverted. However, if he had not angered this girl, she would not have agreed to work for the sage sect so quickly. It had to be said that this pure young body was even more demonic than the demonic path. He was born to be a disciple of the sage sect. Not long after, the young man was lying on the ground like a pile of mud. Princess Linglong's chest rose and fell for a long time before she gradually calmed down. The hatred in her eyes disappeared a little. She said to the girl in white floating in the air, "Give me the heavenly book." The girl in white waved her hand and a page of the heavenly book flew over slowly and landed in her palm. Princess Linglong asked, "This is only one page?" The girl in white said, "We will talk about the rest after you finish deciphering this page." Princess Linglong frowned and said, "If I ask you to do only one thing for 24 hours a day, you will also be annoyed. I can only decipher one page of the heavenly book for 4 hours at most. In order to finish it as soon as possible, you better give it all to me." The girl in white did not agree. Princess Linglong said disdainfully, "Are you afraid that I will run away with the heavenly book? What a joke. This is your place. With you, a few 7th-level cultivators, and an 8th-level cultivator, if I had the ability to escape from here, would I still be caught by you?" The girl in white still did not say anything. Instead, 2 rays of light flew over from the tower in the center of the island. When the rays of light flew close, they turned into 2 pages and landed in Princess Linglong's palm. Since the 3rd Grandmaster had already decided, the girl in white did not say anything. She only looked at Princess Linglong and said, "During the period of deciphering the heavenly book, if you have any requests, you can ask at any time." Princess Linglong said, "I don't have any requests. Just don't bother me. If I am annoyed, I will not be able to decipher the heavenly book." The girl in white said, "From now on, no one will disturb you. However, every 3 days, you have to engrave the contents of the heavenly book into a jade scroll and send it out." Princess Linglong nodded and did not say anything else. She bent down and grabbed Li Mu by the collar and dragged him into the palace, leaving a clear trail of blood along the way. Seeing this, the group of demonic cultivators could not help but speak. "So pitiful. If someone marries such a woman, he will spend the rest of his life in a nightmare. Fortunately, I did not offend her." Boom! When the stone door of the palace closed, everyone's heart tightened. Elder Jiu could not bear it and said to the girl in white, "5th Grandmaster, isn't this unfair to Li Si?" Xian Ming's expression was cold as he said, "The heavenly book is important. We will compensate him in the future." Chapter 607. The stone door of Princess Linglong's cultivation palace slowly closed. She dragged Li Mu by the collar and walked into the main hall at the back. Then, the 2 figures disappeared on the spot. On the ghost island on the high tower, Xian Ming looked at the 3rd ancestor and said, "She entered the flask space." The 3rd ancestor said slowly, "It's absolutely quiet there. It's good for her to comprehend the heavenly book. Let her be. She can't escape from our hands." Xian Ming nodded and asked, "Should we inform them to send the rest of the heavenly books?" The 3rd ancestor shook his head and said, "No need to rush. Let's wait until she finishes deciphering the 3 pages of the heavenly book." "Is there any news about Feng Yi?" Xian Ming said, "The spies of the ghost realm said that Feng Yi has become the subordinate of the ghost lord." The 3rd ancestor thought for a moment and said, "That person has the sun-shooting bow. We can't blame him. When the time is right, I'll personally go to the ghost realm and help him escape." When the sun-shooting bow was mentioned, even the 3rd ancestor of the demonic path showed a trace of fear in his sunken eyes. Even in his 10,000 years of memories, the 3 words, sun-shooting bow, were the most terrifying. There was no other. The black dragon Ao Xian, who was once a nobody, became the nightmare of an entire generation of powerhouses in the continent with this bow. At this moment, in Princess Linglong's storage space, she touched Li Mu's body in a panic and said in a trembling voice, "Lord Li, are you okay? Did I hit you too hard just now? I should have been gentler." "I'm fine. If you didn't hit me hard, they might not have believed you." There was a price to be paid for being a spy. Li Mu knew this better than anyone else. It was easier said than done to dispel the suspicions of these old monsters of the demonic path. Without paying a price, how could he gain their trust? Compared to the 3 pages of the heavenly book, this injury was nothing. After all, It was not like he had never experienced something like this before. Princess Linglong's storage space was not big. It was only the size of a small house. Li Mu could not wait to take the page of the heavenly book from her hand and immersed his divine will into it. This was the first time he had obtained a demonic heavenly book. After the clear heart art dispelled the fog in front of him, Li Mu saw an endless sea. However, this sea was blood-red, and countless strange beasts were struggling in the sea of blood. One after another, blood-colored figures hovered above the sea of blood. The seals in their hands were constantly changing, causing the sea of blood to stir up waves, completely devouring the strange beasts within. Above the blood sea, there were also some strange beasts with wings on their backs. They let out ear-piercing cries and charged towards the crowd above the blood sea. The crowd frantically attacked this strange beast, but it was to no avail. In the end, countless figures flew out. Their bodies turned into balls of bloody light that wrapped around the strange beast. Then, both of them sank into the sea of blood and disappeared without a trace. Li Mu carefully observed the divine arts of those figures and realized that they were very similar to Xuehe's moves. The only difference was that Xuehe used this kind of spell to slaughter the innocent, while the cultivators in the heavenly book didn't hesitate to sacrifice themselves to perish together with the strange beasts. Divine arts were not divided into good and evil. The so-called good and evil referred to the people who used them. This page of the heavenly book recorded a kind of cultivation path that condensed one's own blood essence. The cultivators who cultivated this path used their blood essence as a guide to control the blood essence of others. It was a kind of unorthodox path. The demonic blood sect should have inherited this page of the heavenly book. However, the blood sect was not in the ancestral state. Other than Xuehe, Li Mu almost never met anyone from the blood sect. Li Mu continued to observe the scene in the heavenly book. The blood Dao divine arts were very good at two things. The first was the blood escape technique. By burning part of one's own blood essence, one could obtain unparalleled speed. It was a powerful life-saving technique. The second was the blood explosion technique. By burning all of one's blood essence, one could perish together with the enemy. If the timing was right, one could drag an enemy who was a realm higher than oneself to death with them. Every path of cultivation had its weaknesses and strengths. The weakness of the blood Dao divine arts was that using spells would consume one's blood essence. However, the advantage was also obvious. Every opponent of the blood Dao divine arts had to be careful in the process of battle to prevent the blood Dao divine arts cultivator from perishing together with them. In the heavenly book, there were too many strange beasts and they were too powerful. These blood Dao divine arts cultivators all chose to use the blood explosion technique to perish together with them. Many years ago, the ancient blood Dao divine arts cultivators fought with the strange beasts to the death. Now, the inheritors of the blood Dao divine arts were endangering the continent. If these ancestors knew about this, how would they feel? When Li Mu sat cross-legged on the ground to comprehend the heavenly book, Princess Linglong squatted beside him. She took out a handkerchief from her bosom and wanted to wipe the blood on him. However, she was worried that if she went out, she would arouse suspicion. So, she stretched out her hand several times before finally retracting it. After an unknown period of time, Li Mu slowly opened his eyes. Princess Linglong curiously asked, "Lord Li, do you also possess the heart of 7 orifices?" Li Mu did not deny it. Looking at Princess Linglong's face, he suddenly asked, "Have we met before?" Princess Linglong repeatedly waved her hands. No. I have never left the Yong Kingdom before. How could you possibly have seen me before?" Li Mu did not ask any further. Waving his hand, he said, "You are a princess. There is no need to address me so respectfully." A princess of the Yong Kingdom was still a princess. Li Mu was a subject of the great show. According to etiquette, unless he became the true empress, her status was still higher. Princess Linglong thought for a moment before gathering her courage. "You should be older than me. Can I call you Big Brother Li?" At this moment, Li Mu felt an inexplicable sense of guilt. What sisters did he have around him? In the end, they all became lovers. The Empress had already made him write a small notebook. Li Mu did not dare to casually acknowledge any sisters. At this moment, Princess Linglong continued, "Big Brother Li, can I? I like you and Her Majesty the Empress the most." Since the CP fan had already said so, Li Mu had no reason to refuse. If the Empress knew that the two of them had such a CP fan, she would probably be very happy. Li Mu shrugged his shoulders and said, "If you want to call me that, then call me that." Princess Linglong immediately laughed. Grabbing Li Mu's arm, she said, "Big brother Li, I really did not expect that you would come to save me. Before you came, I was already prepared to commit suicide." Princess Linglong's age was about the same as Xiao Bai and Wan Wan. Li Mu treated her like how he treated Xiao Bai normally. He gently patted her head and said, "Don't worry. Wait for another month and I will bring you away." Li Mu handed the Blood Dao Heavenly Book to her and said, "This page of the Heavenly Book. You can comprehend some of the less powerful abilities. When the time comes, you can deal with them." The demonic Dao was also cautious. They wanted her to give feedback every 3 days. It was obviously impossible for her to not give anything after 3 days. Li Mu used Blood River's memories to filter out some of the things that the demonic Dao had already comprehended. At that time, they would not be able to say anything. After that, Li Mu picked up another page of the Heavenly Book. After his divine will entered the Heavenly Book, Li Mu realized that the contents of the Heavenly Book were not unfamiliar to him. This page of the Heavenly Book recorded the corpse cultivation Dao, which was the Dao that Xian Ming cultivated. At the same time, the corpse sex orthodoxy was passed down from this page of the Heavenly Book. In ancient times, as long as it was in existence with self-awareness, it had its own Dao of cultivation. The corpse Dao was on par with the ghost Dao, the demonic Dao, and the human Dao. It was a supreme great Dao that could nurture a ninth realm expert. This page of the Heavenly Book was no less useful to the cultivation world than the demonic Dao. The ghost Dao Heavenly Book was even more valuable than the Heavenly Books of the 6 sections. For thousands of years, these Heavenly Books were controlled by the demonic Dao. As a result, most of the corpse cultivators and blood cultivators came from the demonic Dao. This caused the originally undifferentiated Dao to become the demonic Dao in people's hearts. The contents of the corpse Dao Heavenly Book were not much different from the rest of the Heavenly Books. Through the contents of the Heavenly Book, Li Mu already knew that during the era of the giant beasts, there was no distinction between the demonic Dao and the righteous Dao. Whether it was the corpse Dao, the ghost Dao, the demonic Dao, or the human Dao experts, they were all fighting hard against the mutated beasts. After the extinction of the mutated beasts, the living beings on the continent began to fight amongst themselves. The human Dao gradually evolved into the Buddhist Dao, the Daoist Dao, and the 100 schools of thought, which opposed the demonic Dao and the ghost Dao. The corpse Dao, the blood Dao, and a portion of the ghost Dao became the demonic Dao. Today, Li Mu unified the 4 Buddhist sects, the 5 Daoist sects, the demonic Dao, and the ghost Dao. If he had 1 or 2 more 8th realm experts, he would be able to suppress the Xuanzong sect and fight against the demonic Dao. Not long after, Li Mu put down this page of the Heavenly Book. When he turned to look at Princess Linglong, he saw that she was holding the last page of the Heavenly Book. Her face was red, and he wondered what she had seen. Li Mu patted her shoulder gently. She seemed to be frightened and hurriedly threw the Heavenly Book in her hand to the ground. Li Mu picked it up and immersed his consciousness into it. After a while, his old face was a little red, and he immediately withdrew his consciousness. Part of the content of this page of the Heavenly Book was about the Dao of dual cultivation between a man and a woman. The Hehuan sect of the demonic Dao probably originated from this. If the Dao of dual cultivation were to be shown in an image, the visual impact would be quite big. Ordinary innocent girls would find it hard to control themselves. Li Mu was different. Li Mu had experience in this kind of thing, so he could definitely read it with a learning attitude. Princess Linglong sat cross-legged in front of Li Mu. Her face was red, and her hands were clasped together as if she didn't know where to put them. Li Mu comforted her by saying, "You're still young. The content of this page of the Heavenly Book is not suitable for you to read. Let me do it." After saying that, Li Mu immersed his consciousness into the page again. The style of this page of the Heavenly Book was different from what Li Mu had seen before. Ordinary people who didn't have any experience, or whose temperament was not enough, would often find it hard to control themselves. Li Mu looked at it with a learning attitude for a while, and soon discovered that this page of the Heavenly Book didn't only contain the Dao of dual cultivation. Other than that, it also contained part of the array, illusion, charm, and various other mystiques. Among them, there was a mysterious array that Li Mu had never seen before that caught his attention. A few key positions of this array were filled with huge supreme-grade spiritual jades. A few extremely old men, who looked like they could die at any time, sat cross-legged in the array. With the activation of the array, those supreme-grade spiritual jades instantly turned into dust. At the same time, above the array, a black whirlpool appeared. As the whirlpool continued to spin, the wrinkles on the foreheads of the few old men in the array began to reduce rapidly. The dark spots on their faces gradually disappeared, and their snow-white hair began to return to black from the roots. Chapter 608. Seeing this scene, Li Mu's eyes suddenly narrowed. This was a lifespan extension method. The appearance of these old men was very similar to the Tianjizi that Li Mu had seen before. This was a sign that their lifespan was nearing its end and they were about to die. But through this formation, they seemed to have regained some of their lost lifespan. This was the lifespan extension method that Li Mu had been longing for a long time. The lifespan extension method of the demonic path was hidden in this page of the heavenly book. Li Mu carefully observed this formation, and gradually more information poured into his mind. This formation was called the sky-stealing formation, which meant to steal the lost lifespan from the heavenly Tao. The formation was extremely complicated, and the resources consumed each time were immeasurable. But the function of the formation was also obvious. It could extend the lifespan of a cultivator who was nearing the end of his lifespan by another 60 years. Most cultivators would be willing to pay any price for this. In addition, Li Mu also saw the memory inheritance method that the demonic path experts had been using. Obviously, unlike the lifespan extension method, the memory inheritance method had been widely spread on the continent. Many cultivators outside the demonic path, such as the White Emperor and ghost servants, were using this method to continue their inheritance. However, the White Emperor failed. The demon corpse had its own intelligence and was tricked by Li Mu into giving up the White Emperor's memory. Now, it was unknown where it was hiding to cultivate. There were not many combat abilities in this page of the heavenly book, but these unorthodox methods, such as dual cultivation, lifespan extension, memory inheritance, and so on, were often more useful than combat abilities. Li Mu exhaled lightly, closed his eyes, and continued to comprehend. Ghost Island. Earth Peak. Several demonic path geniuses were sparring in the square. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk somewhere in the Tao Palace, a stone door suddenly opened, and a bloody hand stretched out from behind the stone door. A young man covered in blood slowly crawled out, but he only crawled out half of his body before he was dragged back by the people behind the door. In the square, someone's throat moved, and he could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. So miserable. You can't judge a book by its cover. That woman looks gentle and quiet, but I didn't expect her to be so perverse and violent. That pure young body, I'm afraid it bodes ill. It's none of our business. Continue. Days passed by just like that. The people of the Earth Peak were already used to some strange occurrences. That woman was obviously of great use to the sage sect. Therefore, even if she brought that pure young body genius in for torture every day, the elders would turn a blind eye to it. Within Li Mu's palace, he lay weakly on his bed and said to the ninth elder, "Ninth elder, I really can't hold on any longer." The ninth elder handed him a bottle of healing elixirs and said, "Hold on a little longer. After this period of time, your future will be bright. The sage sect will remember your contribution. When the time comes, you will receive a lot of benefits." Li Mu asked expectantly, "What benefits? I've suffered so much for Glory Sect and bled so much. Can Glory Sect help me enter the 6th level?" The ninth elder's eyes flashed. After getting along with him for nearly a month, he admired this junior very much. He was clever, talented, and could endure hardship. There weren't many people like him in the sage sect. The ninth elder even thought of taking him as a disciple. After a moment of silence he said, "After entering the 5th level, your cultivation must slow down. It's best if you don't break through within 10 years. Li Mu was puzzled and asked, "Why?" The ninth elder shook his head and said, "There's no why. Just remember my words. I won't harm you." With that, he turned and left. Li Mu looked at his departing figure with a trace of surprise in his eyes. The demonic Tao geniuses outside didn't know that the demon sect gave them unlimited cultivation resources to raise them like pigs. The fattest pig that grew the fastest would be the first to be slaughtered. Similarly, the person who cultivated the fastest wouldn't be far from death. The ninth elder's warning was completely out of Li Mu's expectations. At this time, the ninth elder walked out of Li Mu's cultivation palace and saw a figure standing on the square with a jade slip in his hand. He immediately stepped forward and said respectfully, "Greetings, third forefather." Xian Ming looked back at him and said indifferently, "You've said too much. I'm guilty." The ninth elder knelt on one knee and said with a complicated expression, "But he has done too much for the sage sect. I can't bear to see him end up like that. Just this once." Xian Ming said lightly and flew to the tower. The ninth elder breathed a sigh of relief. When he came to his senses, he found that his back was wet with cold sweat. On the tower in the center of the ghost island, Xian Ming handed the jade slip to the third forefather. After a moment, the third forefather nodded and said, "Although most of them were comprehended by the predecessors, it also means that she didn't play any tricks. The heart of 7 orifices is hard to find in 10,000 years. Now there are 2. Is this a sign?" After a while he shook his head and said, "It's a pity that I'm not Tianjizi. I can't see the future." Xian Ming said, "Wait until we get Xuanzong's heavenly book and let her interpret it. If Tianjizi doesn't die, Xuanzong can't move." The third forefather closed his eyes and said, "It's about time. I'm going to start avoiding the tribulation. I'll leave this to you." Just after noon, Li Mu stood in the courtyard and saw endless black fog gushing out of the tower in the center of the ghost island, completely enveloping the tower. Having finished reading that page of the heavenly book, Li Mu knew very well that cultivators who obtained lifespan extension through the Great Sky-Stealing Array would face a heavenly tribulation every month. They had to conceal their aura and deceive everyone to survive the heavenly tribulation. This tower was used to conceal one's aura and hide from the heavenly secrets. Seeing this, Li Mu walked out of the palace. In the square, several geniuses of the demonic path saw him and couldn't help but mock him. "Yo, you still have the face to come out? Why is such a person still alive? If I were you, I'd rather die." In the past month, they had seen Li Mu being tortured every day. At first, they sympathized with him, but later, they despised him. The existence of such a person was an insult to geniuses like them, and also an insult to men. In the face of everyone's mockery, the ninth elder's face darkened. He said, "Shut up, all of you." Before he could finish his sentence, a figure suddenly flew out from the Dao Palace at the very front. It was Princess Linglong. The long whip in her hand lashed out at the 3 people who had mocked her just now. She said coldly, "How dare you scold my people?" The 3 of them were at the 5th level of cultivation, similar to Princess Linglong. They easily dodged her whip. Princess Linglong looked at the ninth elder and frowned. "Let them stand there and don't move." The ninth elder hesitated. "This," Princess Linglong snorted. "I'll return the heavenly book to you. I won't read it." The Glory sect had spent a lot of effort, and Li Si had shed a lot of blood and suffered a lot to convince this lady. If she went back on her words, no one present would be able to escape punishment. The ninth elder's face changed. He pointed at the 3 people and said, "You guys, come here and don't move." The ninth elder said. Although the 3 of them looked sullen, they still stood there obediently. Princess Linglong waved the whip in her hand for a while, and it did not take long for them to become as pitiful as Li Mu. Princess Linglong seemed to be tired. She put away her whip and pulled Li Mu's collar. "Come with me." Seeing Li Mu being dragged into the Holy Ji Palace, the ninth elder had a puzzled look on his face. He muttered, "Have they developed feelings for each other?" He just couldn't figure out what was going on with the youngsters no matter how hard he tried. He tossed 3 medicinal pills to the 3 people who had looks of grief and indignation on their faces and said indifferently, "Idiots, what do you mean by that expression? I'm saving you. If you anger her, the 3rd ancestor and 5th ancestor will blame you. None of you will be able to escape." The 3 people trembled. At this moment, not only did they raise their guard against the lady, but they also placed Li Si in the list of people not to be trifled with. At this moment, in the Daoist palace, Li Mu held Princess Linglong's hand and transmitted his voice to her. "You were too impulsive just now." Princess Linglong was still angry. "I just didn't want them to scold you like that." Li Mu didn't expect that in his lifetime. He would have a fan who would blindly defend him. He could only comfort her. "It's all an act anyway. We'll be leaving soon. I'm afraid Yong is no longer suitable for you. When the time comes, you can come with me to Shindu." Okay. I can even see Her Majesty in Shindu." Princess Linglong said happily. Then, she realized something and her face turned pale. What's wrong? Li Mu asked, puzzled. Princess Linglong raised her head and looked at him worriedly. It's over. It's over. Big Brother Li, I've been too harsh on you these days. If Her Majesty knows, she won't be angry, right? Chapter 609. Li Mu thought for a while and said to Princess Linglong, it's better not to tell her about these things. It was nothing for a man to suffer a little outside. He was not afraid of the Empress being angry, but he did not want her to feel sorry for him. He looked at Princess Linglong again and asked, are you ready? Princess Linglong nodded her head. Li Mu let go of her hand, and the sun-shooting bow appeared in his hand. At the same time, an illusory shadow appeared in the cave. This was a doppelganger that Li Mu had created in a month. This doppelganger contained his full power. The doppelganger walked into Li Mu's body, and Li Mu shot the bow into the sky. After a flash of light, the earth peak flashed, and a transparent shield collapsed. Li Mu held Princess Linglong's hand and immediately used shrinking distance. The two of them appeared 100 miles away from the demonic island. Almost at the same time when the sun-shooting bow shattered the protective array, Xian Ming, who was cultivating in the tower in the middle of the island, suddenly raised her head. Her cold and emotionless face revealed a rare look of shock. She blurted out, this is the aura of the sun-shooting bow. Then, her body moved out of the tower. At the same time, she felt a spatial fluctuation coming from one of the palaces on the earth peak. Xian Ming scanned with her spiritual will, but she did not find Princess Linglong. The aura of the pure young body had also completely disappeared. Li Mu! She immediately realized something, and a shocking roar reverberated throughout the demonic island. Spots of white light emitted from Xian Ming's body, and in the next moment, she disappeared into thin air, leaving only a name reverberating on the demonic island. What happened? It sounded like the voice of the fifth forefather. Who angered the fifth forefather? Li Mu. Did this person do something again? Only after Xian Ming left did the experts on the demonic island react. They all flew into the sky with a confused look, not knowing what had happened. At this moment, 100 miles away from the demonic island, two figures appeared from the void. Princess Linglong's pretty face was filled with astonishment. Just a moment ago, they were still in the lair of diabolism. In the next moment, they were above the sea, and they could no longer see the ghostly island. This kind of long-distance teleportation was something that even transcendence experts couldn't master. Before she could come back to her senses, a white line suddenly appeared on the surface of the sea in the distance, and it was approaching them at an extremely fast speed. Princess Linglong asked curiously, what is that white line? Li Mu was alarmed and immediately said, leave quickly. That was not a white line. It was steam rising from the boiling sea. Xian Ming had caught up. As expected of the 5 ancestors of the demonic Dao, an old monster from 10,000 years ago. Even though Li Mu had taken the initiative, she could still catch up so quickly. Li Mu held Princess Linglong's hand and disappeared again. After 3 breaths, Xian Ming appeared at their previous location. Her face was cold as she continued to chase to the west. She said coldly, let's see how many times you can move. After teleporting out of the void once again, Li Mu's magic power had already been depleted by a small half. Although the shrinking ground was extremely fast, it also consumed a lot of spiritual power. Usually, he would recover his spiritual power as he hurried along. In this situation, he obviously didn't have the time to recover his spiritual power. As soon as the two of them appeared, the white line appeared on the surface of the sea again. Li Mu continued to move. This time, he and Princess Linglong appeared on a small island. Floating above the island, Li Mu didn't run away again. Instead, he quietly waited for Xian Ming's arrival. After a few breaths, the white line on the surface of the sea swept over, and the figure of a woman in white walked out. She was about 100 feet away from Li Mu. However, she didn't attack Li Mu. Instead, she looked down at the sea below and said coldly, come out. A shadow flew out from the sea and turned into an old man. He cupped his hands at Xian Ming and said, greetings, Lord Xian Ming. Looking at the old man in front of her, Xian Ming's expression became dignified. She said coldly, ghost servant, you dare to stop me? When she was at her peak, even the Ghost Lord was afraid of her. She didn't care about a mere ghost servant. However, in this life, she hadn't cultivated to the peak. The ghost servant in front of her had the strength to fight with her. The ghost servant just looked at her calmly and said, "I have to obey the master's order. Lord Xianming, please don't blame me. Then let's die together with them." Xianming's expression was cold. The sea below also froze instantly. Her cold voice seemed to come from the endless hell. As soon as Xianming's voice fell, Li Mu felt that the blood and primordial spirit in his body were about to break out. Princess Linglong's face was even paler. Her primordial spirit shadow appeared outside her body. Li Mu immediately sent her into the flask space. He also distanced himself from the battlefield. Both Xianming and the ghost servant had the strength of the peak of the transcendent realm. In the center of their battle, within a radius of 10 miles, huge waves rolled up. The sea water boiled into fog for a moment and then froze into ice for a moment. The sky also dimmed. The white clouds near the battlefield were scattered and disappeared. Li Mu was dozens of miles away. His hair and clothes fluttered because of the wind caused by the aftermath of the spell. The ghost servant's spiritual power was more profound, but Xianming's experience was obviously more abundant. The two of them couldn't determine the winner in a short time. However, if the battle dragged on for a long time, the experts of the demon sect from the Ghost Island would arrive. In Li Mu's hand, the sun-shooting bow appeared again. He quickly locked onto Xianming and shot an arrow. This arrow took away one of Xianming's arms. Li Mu's spiritual power was also depleted. He quickly used the incantation to recover his spiritual power and waited for the second arrow to be shot. There was no need to talk about martial ethics when dealing with the enemy. It would be best if he could kill her today. Even if he couldn't, he had to end the battle as soon as possible. After being hit by the sun-shooting bow, Xianming's strength was damaged. In the battle with the ghost servant, she immediately fell into a disadvantage. At this time the ghost servant suddenly said, "Ghost Empress, please lend me the sun-shooting bow." Li Mu didn't react at first. He was stunned for a moment before he realized what the ghost empress meant. At present, other than the Tao Te Ching that could injure the enemy 800 and himself 1,000, the sun-shooting bow was his biggest trump card. Li Mu naturally couldn't give it to others easily. This bow couldn't recognize an owner. Whoever had it could use it. If it was given to an evil person, wouldn't there be endless troubles? Li Mu was still hesitating, but Xianming's expression had changed greatly. She no longer fought with the ghost servant. Her body turned into a white light and disappeared into the sky in a flash. The ghost servant slowly flew back. He cupped his hands at Li Mu and said, "Please forgive this old servant for being rash. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to intimidate her." Li Mu hadn't seen the other abilities of the 5 ancestors of the demonic way, but her ability to escape was top-notch. Both times, she was decisive and straightforward, without any hesitation. No wonder her memory could be safely passed down for 10,000 years without any mistakes. Li Mu didn't delay. He and the ghost servant flew to the coast of the South Sea. At this moment, the crisis had been resolved. However, 3 days later, when the third ancestor woke up, they would have to bear the fury of an 8th realm expert. He had to make thorough arrangements early. When Li Mu brought Princess Linglong back to Yong, Xianming, who had lost an arm, also returned to Ghost Island. He and the third ancestor didn't expect that Li Si was actually Li Mu. His purpose in coming to Ghost Island was to rescue Princess Linglong and steal the Heavenly Book. He actually succeeded. Although the Sage Sect had obtained a page of the Heavenly Book from Yong, 3 pages had been snatched away by Li Mu. It was a disastrous loss. What was even more infuriating was that everyone, including her and the third ancestor, had been fooled by Li Mu. For 10,000 years, no one had ever done such a thing. The Sage Sect had never lost the Heavenly Book they had obtained. The commotion at the Earth Peak was too great. In addition, the 5th ancestor had returned with an arm missing. This matter quickly caused a huge uproar on Ghost Island. Li Si is a spy. He is that Li Mu from the Great Show? He snatched away Princess Linglong and the Heavenly Book. Countless demonic path powerhouses were shocked speechless by this news. No one doubted Li Si because he was brought back by their own people. It was even more impossible for them to think that he was Li Mu. Who was Li Mu? The future headmaster of the Fulu School, the official of the Empress of the Great Zhou, the only demon empress of the Queen of the Thousand Demons, the man behind the Ghost Lord of the Ghost Realm. He single-handedly influenced the situation of the mainland, and was the #1 enemy of the Sage sect. He was the man with the most power and the most prominent status on the mainland. Who was Li Si? A good-for-nothing who was ravaged by women every day. Who would have thought that they were the same person? The fifth elder is in trouble this time. He was the one who brought Li Mu back. He can't escape responsibility. There is no doubt about the fifth elder's loyalty. I'm afraid that the fifth elder had been tricked by Li Mu from the beginning. This person knows when to yield and when to stand tall. He is the most difficult enemy of the Sage sect. If he escapes this time, there will be endless trouble in the future. In the midst of the crowd's discussion, the fifth elder's face was ghastly pale, and he gradually collapsed to the ground. Ninth elder's face was lifeless as he clenched the medicinal pill he had concocted for Li Si. With a bang, he crushed the jade bottle. Chapter 6:10. Father. Mother. In the Yong Imperial Palace, Princess Linglong threw herself into the arms of a graceful and noble woman, tears streaming down her cheeks. After being abducted by the demon sect, she never thought that she would ever see her parents again. The woman's eyes were also brimming with tears. Holding her daughter's face, she asked with concern, "My poor daughter. You must have suffered a lot." Princess Linglong gazed at Li Mu. She hadn't suffered at all. The one who had truly endured humiliation and suffering was Li Mu. Wiping her tears, she looked at the woman and said, "Mother, don't worry. With Big Brother Li here, they didn't do anything to me." The young emperor and empress respectfully bowed to Li Mu, gratefully saying, "Many thanks, Lord Li. If it weren't for Lord Li, my daughter would likely have met with misfortune." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "You're welcome. This is what the Great Zhou should do." The Yong Empire paid so much protection money to the Great Zhou every year. This was the purpose of the protection money. Soon after, Li Mu said, "Although I've already brought Linglong back, the danger from the demon sect has yet to be resolved. In 3 days, one of the demon sect's 3 patriarchs, an 8th-level expert, will awaken from his slumber. It's very likely that he will take revenge on the Yong Empire. We need to prepare early." When everyone heard this, their faces were filled with worry. The Yong Empire was already unable to resist the 7th-level demon sect's 5 patriarchs. If an 8th-level demon sect's 5 patriarchs came, the Yong Empire would be in danger of annihilation. Seeing their worry, Li Mu said, "Don't worry. I've already made arrangements. Even if the demon sect's 3 patriarchs really descend upon the Yong Empire, there is no need to fear them." Who was Li Mu? He was the continent's legend. He had pacified the Great Zhou, allied with the Yao Nation, and allied with the Ghost Realm. Everything he had done was worthy of being recorded in the annals of history. Not long ago, he had charged into the demon sect's lair alone and rescued Linglong from the hands of the world's top experts. The people of the Yong Empire had long since regarded him as their backbone. The Yong Emperor solemnly said, "If Lord Li has any instructions, the Yong Empire will definitely do them." Li Mu nodded and said, "I need some high-grade spiritual jades and some top-grade materials for setting up arrays." The Yong Emperor immediately replied, "We will have someone make the arrangements." Li Mu had only felt the tip of the iceberg from Tianjizi. That mountain-like pressure was still fresh in his memory. There was an insurmountable gap between the 7th realm and the 8th realm. Even if several 7th realm cultivators joined forces, they were still no match for an 8th realm cultivator. However, if several of them were not enough, what about 10 of them? The state of Yong currently had 3 transcendents. The southern states had the 5 Daoist sects, the Ghost Realm, the Yao Nation, the 4 Buddhist sects, and the Great Zhou. Li Mu hadn't calculated in detail before, but after doing so, he realized that he could mobilize so many transcendents just by relying on his reputation and the subordinates he controlled. If he could integrate this force, even the 3 ancestors of the demon sect wouldn't be able to return alive. The only problem was that the 4 Daoist sects were still fine. They were originally in the south and could support the state of Yong in a short period of time. However, the Great Zhou, the Fulu School, the Yao Nation, and the Ghost Realm were too far away from the state of Yong and couldn't provide timely assistance. Unless he could gather them together in an extremely short period of time. Coincidentally, the heavenly tomes of the Spirit Array sect recorded an ultra-long-distance teleportation array. This kind of teleportation array could easily teleport people tens of thousands of li or even tens of thousands of li away in an instant. It could be said that it utilized the power of space to the limit. The only drawback was that it consumed too many resources. Every teleportation required a large amount of high-grade spiritual jades as the energy source. Once or twice was fine, but if used too many times, even a large sect like the Fulu school would use up all of its spiritual jades. If that weren't the case, Li Mu would have already constructed countless of these teleportation arrays. One was in the Divine Capital, one was in the Yao Nation, one was in the Ghost Realm, and one was in Mount Baiyun. How much time could they save? As one of the wealthiest people on the continent, Li Mu still hadn't chosen to construct this kind of teleportation array. This was enough to show just how expensive it was. In the current situation, he had no choice but to do so. If the three ancestors of the demonic Dao personally descended, the state of Yong would undoubtedly be destroyed. It could be said that apart from the Xuanzong, the demon sect could destroy any of the various powers on the continent. If he constructed long-distance teleportation arrays in every region, he would be able to provide reinforcements when one side was in trouble. The cost of teleportation arrays was too great, so he wouldn't normally use them. He would only activate them when the various powers were facing a great crisis. On the way back, Li Mu had already sent a message to the various powers, ordering them to immediately prepare the materials. In the following 3 days and 2 nights, he wouldn't be able to rest for even a moment. After personally helping the state of Yong construct the teleportation array and teaching them how to use it, Li Mu immediately headed for the Spirit Array sect. It would take too long for him to set up the teleportation array by himself. He needed to find some helpers from the Spirit Array sect. Meanwhile, in the state of Yong, Princess Linglong was telling the imperial family in detail about what had happened in the past few days. A month ago, everyone, including the Emperor of Yong, believed that the Great Zhou's promise to help them rescue Linglong and that they had to wait for news was just a temporary prevarication. Unexpectedly, a month later, Li Mu had brought Linglong back in one piece. After hearing the entire story from Linglong, everyone's hearts were in turmoil, unable to calm down for a long time. As a Realm 6 cultivator, how much courage did one need to venture deep into the demon nest alone? To put down one's noble status and use the most humble attitude to accept inhumane torture and humiliation every day, all for the sake of waiting for an opportunity, how many people could do such a thing? More importantly, he had succeeded. He had successfully rescued Linglong from the hands of countless demonic Dao experts. It could be said to be a miracle. This should have been an impossible task, but he had done it. Not only had he rescued Linglong, but he had also snatched away the 3 pages of the heavenly tomes of the demonic Dao, creating a miracle among miracles. It was no wonder that even the Empress of the Great Zhou had pledged her heart to him. In Princess Linglong's mind, that tall and lofty figure had already become like a mountain. The Empress of Yong sighed softly and said, "We owe Lord Li a huge favor. I don't know how we can repay him." The Emperor of Yong thought for a long time and said, "Why don't?" The husband and wife looked at each other, understanding each other's intentions. The Empress of Yong said, "That will depend on whether Linglong agrees or not." Princess Linglong nodded repeatedly. "I agree. I agree to anything." The Emperor of Yong said, "We are prepared to give the Emperor's qi to Lord Li." Princess Linglong said disappointedly, "So father was talking about the Emperor's qi." The Emperor of Yong looked at her and asked, "Then what did you think it was?" Princess Linglong sighed softly and said, "I thought it was something else. Like I said, how could there be such a good thing?" 2 days later. In these 2 days, Li Mu had traveled all over the Zhu continent's Shang continent, going back and forth to the Great Zhou, the Yao Nation, the Ghost Realm, and finally back to Yong. Although he was a little tired, he had at least finished setting up all the teleportation formations and no longer needed to be threatened by the demonic Dao's 3 ancestors. Although he had spent an immeasurable amount of resources, the effects were obvious. The ultra-long-distance teleportation formations were the foundation of the various factions' mutual support. Henceforth, when the various factions encountered a crisis, they would no longer have to fight alone. They would be able to gather their peak forces at the first moment. Similar incidents like the heavenly tomes of Yong being stolen would never happen again. In the evening, the Yong imperial family held a grand banquet in his honor. After the banquet, the Emperor of Yong cupped his hands and bowed to Li Mu, saying, "Lord Li has worked hard." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "As long as all parties can work together to resist the demonic Dao in the future, a bit of hard work is nothing." The Emperor of Yong continued. Lord Li has done a great favor for Yong. We have discussed it with our fellow clansmen and wish to give Lord Li a gift. Please accept it. Li Mu waved his hand again and said, Yong has paid tribute to Great Zhou, and Great Zhou has protected you. This official does not need any gifts. The Emperor of Yong persisted. If it weren't for Lord Li, Yong would have faced destruction. As the Emperor, we ought to thank Lord Li heavily. As her father, Lord Li has saved my daughter. Please give me a chance to repay you. Since the Emperor of Yong was so insistent, Li Mu found it difficult to refuse. He said, since that is the case, I will accept deferentially. The Emperor of Yong revealed a smile and said, we have discussed it with the madam and have decided to give Linglong. Li Mu's complexion changed greatly, and he hastily said, you can't. You absolutely can't. One didn't necessarily need to repay a life-saving favor with one's body. Xiao Bai was still lining up, so how could Linglong have a turn? Moreover, her name wasn't in the Empress booklet. The Emperor of Yong simply didn't know that he was biting the hand that fed him. At this moment, the Emperor of Yong continued, I will give Linglong's strand of Imperial Qi to Lord Li. Please accept it. Li Mu stared blankly for a moment before asking, so you were talking about Imperial Qi? The Emperor of Yong nodded and said, half a year ago, Yong's ancestral shrine condensed another strand of Imperial Qi. Originally, it was to wait for Linglong to advance to the 6th level before allowing her to refine it. What did Lord Li think it was? Li Mu coughed softly, his complexion returning to normal. He changed the topic and said, No. This gift is too valuable. I cannot accept it. However, the Yong Emperor persisted. We have provoked such a powerful enemy. Even if Yong had another 7th level expert, it would be useless. Linglong has already agreed to this matter. Lord Li, please don't refuse. The Great Zhou hadn't condensed a single strand of Imperial Qi for 50 years. The two factions had argued for several years over who should possess the Imperial Qi. This gift could no longer be described as valuable. Li Mu continued to refuse. No, I truly cannot accept this gift. The Yong Emperor thought for a moment before asking, Does Lord Li mean that you want us to betroth Linglong to you? Li Mu flatly said, How is that possible? Am I that kind of person? Hearing this, the Yong Emperor fell into deep thought. Li Mu thought for a moment. He had too many beauties by his side. In the eyes of those who didn't understand him, he really did seem like that kind of person. To prove that he really wasn't that kind of person, Li Mu could say, in that case, it would be impolite for this official to refuse that strand of Imperial Qi. Chapter 6:11. In the Yong ancestral shrine, a golden dragon made of telekinesis coiled around a huge stone pillar. Compared to the golden dragon that Li Mu saw in the Great Zhou ancestral shrine, this dragon was slightly larger, but not by much. It probably wouldn't be long before the Great Zhou's imperial aura matured. It had to be said that the Yong kingdom's ability to rule a country and win the hearts of the people was unique. Its territory was only 1/10 of the Great Zhou's, and its population was far less than the Great Zhou's. However, the speed at which it condensed imperial aura far surpassed the Great Zhou's. Li Mu couldn't help but be curious about the strategy recorded in the Yong Kingdom's Heavenly Tome. Unfortunately, the Heavenly Tome was still in the hands of the demon sect. Knowing that Linglong had already comprehended the Heavenly Tome, Xianming didn't give it to her. Therefore, it was a 1-for-3 exchange. The demon sect had stolen 1 page of the Heavenly Tome from Yong, while Li Mu had stolen 3 pages from the demon sect. No matter how one looked at it, Li Mu didn't lose out. This time, the demon sect had been bullied by Li Mu. If they had 10 pages of the Heavenly Tome, they could only obtain 1 page every 1,000 years. Li Mu had wasted 3,000 years of effort in a single month. When the 3 ancestors woke up from their tribulations and learned of this news, who knew how they would feel? From today onwards, all the factions related to Li Mu were on high alert. As soon as the transmission formation lit up, they would teleport to Yong without hesitation. Li Mu waited in the palace that the Yong imperial clan had arranged for him. Princess Linglong walked in from outside and said, Big brother Li, aren't you bored staying here? Why don't I take you to the palace? After all, this was his first time facing the might of an 8th realm expert. In order to wait for the arrival of the demon sect's 3 ancestors, Li Mu's nerves had been stretched taut. Hearing this, He didn't refuse and strolled around the Yong Imperial Palace with Princess Linglong. The two strolled around the Imperial Gardens before arriving at the front hall of the Imperial Palace. Coincidentally, it was noon at the moment. The officials of the various yamen left the yamen and headed to the food and beverage department for lunch. When they saw the two of them, they all stopped in their tracks and bowed. "Greetings, Princess Linglong." Princess Linglong smiled and said, "Thank you all for your hard work. Please go and have your meal." The officials cupped their hands and took their leave. One of them walked a few steps and looked back at Li Mu. After a moment of confusion, he suddenly exclaimed, "Could this be Lord Li Mu?" As soon as he said this, all the officials turned their heads and immediately caused a commotion. "What? Lord Li? Where is Lord Li?" "I've heard that Lord Li rescued the princess from the demon sect and is currently in our Yong. Could this person be?" Facing the excited Yong officials, Li Mu cupped his fists and said, "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you." As soon as Li Mu's voice fell, the atmosphere in the field immediately boiled. "I've long heard of Lord Li's great name. Today, I finally have the fortune to meet you. Lord Li, can you tell us in detail how you allied with the Demon Kingdom and the Ghost Realm? For thousands of years. Only you have accomplished such a magnificent feat for the human race. I'm more interested in how Lord Li rescued Princess Linglong. This is like pulling a tooth from the tiger's mouth. It can be called a miracle." Li Mu was escorted to the food and beverage department by the enthusiastic Yong officials and had lunch with them. The Imperial Kitchen of Yong was not solely responsible for cooking for the Imperial family. It was also responsible for the 3 meals a day for the officials. The Yong court had even established a food and beverage department for this purpose. The food and beverage department had famous chefs from all over the country who specialized in the local cuisines of each region. This allowed the officials, regardless of where they came from, to eat their own local cuisine in the palace. With regards to this point, Li Mu planned to imitate the Yong court when he returned. Only by treating the officials well could he increase their efficiency and enthusiasm in their work. Moreover, hiring a few chefs did not require a lot of investment, but it could bring unexpected benefits. "Lord Li, I've heard that the Empress of the Great Zhou, the Queen of the Myriad Demons, and the Ghost Lord of the Ghost Realm are all your lovers. Lord Li is truly worthy of being our role model. Whenever Lord Li plans to attack Xuanzong, we will support you in seeking justice. Lord Li, tell us, how did you escape from the clutches of so many demonic Dao experts?" Li Mu had never imagined that his largest fan club would be in the Yong court. Many officials in the Great Zhou feared him and avoided him like the plague. When the Yong court officials, especially the younger ones, saw him, they were like fans meeting their idol. Among them, Linglong was the head fan club. As a qualified fan club leader, Linglong took the initiative to lead Li Mu away from the Imperial Palace when she saw that he was unable to bear the harassment of the younger officials. Walking on the streets of the Yong court, Li Mu felt as if he was taking a stroll in the divine capital. The citizens of the Yong kingdom were full of vigor, unlike the people Li Mu saw when he first came to Chengdu. Most of them were lifeless, like walking corpses. The citizens of the Yong kingdom naturally had a lot of telekinesis. On the streets of the Yong court, children played with each other, cheerful laughter filling the air. As the elderly walked through the streets, people took the initiative to support them. Li Mu even saw nursing homes and orphanages. Linglong told him that the court would take care of the elderly and children who had lost their families. The money and resources needed to settle them would come from the national treasury. Coupled with donations from the outside world, there would not be a situation where the elderly and children were left without a home. In addition, the court would allocate funds every year for the impoverished commoners who found it difficult to continue living, providing them with the bare minimum of living expenses. In the Yong court, if the commoners fell ill, they would not have to spend too much. The court would cover the majority of their medical expenses. Li Mu's various experiences in the state of Yong made him realize that he and the Empress had done many important things over the years, but they had neglected these trivial matters. These were the matters closest to the lives of the common people and were also the matters that the common people were most concerned about. It was no wonder that the people of the Yong court were so united. People did not only care about their relatives, but also their children. The elderly had their parents, the strong had their uses, and the young had their strengths. The poor, widowed, lonely, alone, disabled, and ill were all taken care of. While most of the countries on the continent were still in the feudal era, the Yong court was already moving towards a harmonious society. After thinking it over, Li Mu asked, "Therefore, the trade between the Yong court and the Great Zhou court is actually for the sake of the commoners. Is this the way of governing a country described in the Heavenly Book?" Linglong nodded. 100 years ago, the old ancestor obtained a page of the Heavenly Book by chance, and slowly comprehended these ways of governing a country. Only then did the Yong court its current state. A single page of the Heavenly Book was enough to pass down a top-notch sect. The Yong court had 3 transcendents and several Dongxian experts. In fact, they were not inferior to the Daoist sections. It was not an exaggeration to view them as a sect disguised as a government. If the news of the Heavenly Book had not been leaked, the Yong court would have relied on the willpower of tens of millions of citizens to grow into one of the top powers on the continent in a few decades or 100 years. After all, in terms of willpower, the Great Zhou could not compare to the Yong court. Accompanied by Linglong, Li Mu toured the Yong court for a day. Many insights emerged in his mind. Aside from the dark clouds of the demonic Tao that still shrouded the continent, the Great Zhou's internal and external troubles had basically been quelled. It was time to consider improving the welfare of the commoners and better gather the willpower of the people. The Great Zhou's commoners outnumbered the Yong court by more than 10 times. If their average willpower was at the Yong court's level, wouldn't they be able to condense a strand of imperial aura every year? Of course, the difficulty of governing such a large country was incomparable to that of the Yong court. However, if some changes were made to the commoners, the speed at which imperial aura was condensed would increase several-fold. When night fell, Li Mu and Linglong returned to the imperial palace. The various regions of the Yong court were still peaceful. Li Mu was somewhat puzzled. The demonic Tao's 3 ancestors had already finished their tribulations. When they learned that the 3 pages of the Heavenly Book had been stolen, they would definitely be furious. However, regardless of whether it was the Yong court or the Great Zhou, there was no news of them. The demonic Tao had only accumulated a few pages of the Heavenly Book for several thousand years. Now that Li Mu had stolen 3 pages, it was unlikely that they would suffer such a loss. However, it was fine if he did not come. As long as the 3 ancestors did not take action, the world would be peaceful and stable. The pressure in Li Mu's heart was swept away. Deep into the night, the Yong court was quiet. At the same time, in the depths of the southern sea, endless roars could be heard from the towering waves. "Divine Predictor, you have repeatedly obstructed me. One day, I will flatten your Xuanzong." Chapter 6:12. Li Mu originally thought that after the demon sect's 3 ancestors woke up, they would immediately take revenge on him and Yong and snatch back the heavenly tomes. Unexpectedly, he had stayed in the Yong kingdom for half a month without seeing any signs of activity. Neither the demon sect's 3 ancestors nor Xianming had any intention of snatching back the heavenly tomes. Li Mu's numerous long-distance teleportation formations seemed to have been built in vain. At this moment, Li Mu suddenly recalled that Pei Yi had once said that the 3 ancestors could not easily set foot on the continent. Although Li Mu didn't know the reason behind this, since the Devil Sect didn't plan on attacking Yong, there was no need for Li Mu to remain here. The reason why he had stayed in Yong for so long was to learn how to govern Yong. The Great Zhou's internal problems had been resolved, and its external troubles had been quelled. What was needed now was peaceful development. In this aspect, he needed to learn from Yong. In the Yong Imperial Palace, Li Mu extended his hand to Linglong and said, "Let's go." This time, he wanted to bring Princess Linglong back to the divine capital. Firstly, her heart of 7 orifices was extremely attractive to the demonic Tao. If she remained in Yong, Yong would not be able to protect her. In addition, Linglong had taken the initiative to follow Li Mu to the divine capital. She felt deeply guilty for torturing Li Mu every day on the demonic island. Although it was an act, she had really done it. She had taken the initiative to follow Li Mu to atone for her sins. Li Mu had emphasized to her many times that it was only a temporary measure in times of danger. However, Princess Linglong seemed to have accepted this stubbornly. Since he was going to take her with him anyway, Li Mu let her be. Aside from protecting her, Li Mu actually had a small selfish motive. Although the heavenly tomes of Yong had been snatched away by the demonic Tao, Linglong was a walking heavenly tomes. If he brought her to the divine capital and had her help the Great Zhou implement a series of reforms, wouldn't he and the Empress be liberated? As the group watched the 2 disappear, the Yong Emperor suddenly realized something and muttered, "Oh no, we fell into a trap." Great Zhou, Shen Du. According to past practice, whenever Lord Li Mu disappeared for a period of time, it meant that he was planning something big. The Great Zhou, the Yao Nation, and the Ghost Realm had formed an alliance during his absence. This time, news of Lord Li barging into the demon sect's lair alone and rescuing Princess Linglong from Yong under the noses of many demon sect experts spread from Yong to Shendu. Even if the people were already used to his actions, they still couldn't help but sigh in their hearts when they heard about this. Lord Li was forever a god. Ever since he stepped into the divine capital, all the things he did were things that others couldn't do, things that others didn't dare to do, and things that others didn't even dare to do. Even the people he chose to date were like this. In the entire Great Zhou, he was probably the only one who dared to flirt with the Empress. At this moment, in the Changle Palace, Li Mu was preparing to report to the Empress. Zhou Yi sensed that Li Mu had returned and was originally overjoyed. However, in the next moment, he sensed the aura of an unfamiliar woman beside him. Seeing Li Mu and a young woman walk in, the Empress only shot him a glance and didn't say anything. Li Mu understood the Empress so well that he knew what she was thinking with just a glance. Unhurriedly he introduced, "Your Majesty, this is Princess Linglong of Yong. She possesses the heart of 7 orifices and is one of the important targets of the demon sect. In order to protect her and prevent her from being abducted by the demon sect again, this subject acted on his own initiative and brought her back." Princess Linglong's eyes were filled with stars as she looked at the Empress. She hurriedly bowed and said, "Linglong greets Your Majesty the Empress." Zhou Yi felt uncomfortable under Princess Linglong's gaze. He lightly coughed and said, "Dispense with the formalities. Ali, arrange a palace for Princess Linglong to live in." According to etiquette, the envoys or nobles of other countries should be placed in the Chamberlain of Dependencies. They had never been placed in the palace. Li Mu opened his mouth and said, "Your Majesty, isn't it a little inappropriate to have Linglong live in the palace?" Zhou Yi indifferently glanced at him and asked, "Then where do you think is appropriate for her to live? The Li residence?" Li Mu decisively shut his mouth. Ali and Mr. Mei went to tidy up the palace for Linglong. The Empress walked outside the Changle Palace and pretended to be admiring the scenery. She indifferently said to Li Mu, "Her name wasn't on that paper." Li Mu helplessly said, "Your Majesty, what are you thinking? I only brought her back to protect her. At the same time, I also want her to help the Great Zhou implement some reforms that affect the people's lives. Also, she is an admirer of Your Majesty." Zhou Yi was diverted by Li Mu's change of topic. He asked, "What does she admire about me?" Li Mu said, "Your Majesty is young, but you are already one of the most powerful people in the Zhou continent. You control the most powerful empire in the Zhou continent. You are the idol of countless women, including Linglong. She has told me more than once about her admiration for Your Majesty." At the entrance of another palace, Princess Linglong looked at Li Mu and the Empress standing side by side not far away. She was full of joy and said, "Big Brother Li and Your Majesty are a perfect match. Seeing them together makes me happy." Mr. Mei was puzzled and asked, "Your Majesty and Li Mu are together. What makes you happy?" Princess Linglong said, "I don't know. In any case, I'm just happy." Zhou Yi glanced at Linglong from the corner of her eyes and asked Li Mu, "What's there to be happy about?" Li Mu explained, "Your Majesty might not understand, but when she admires the two of us at the same time, she would very much want to see us together. Aren't the people of the divine capital like this? Your Majesty also knows the people's cries for us." Zhou Yi understood Li Mu's explanation. Countless people of the divine capital hoped that she would make Li Mu empress. She didn't expect that there would also be such a person in the distant Yong kingdom. At this moment, Zhou Qiong suddenly didn't care so much about the fact that Li Mu had brought back a beautiful woman. She glanced at Li Mu and said, "Follow me." Li Mu followed behind the Empress and soon arrived in front of the ancestral shrine. The Empress entered the ancestral shrine, and Li Mu followed her in. Inside the ancestral shrine, 36 cauldrons of psychokinesis shone with an abnormally resplendent golden light. The golden threads extending from each cauldron were at least twice as thick as the ones Li Mu had seen last time. Li Mu was astonished for a moment, but he soon understood. The Great Zhou of today was no longer the Great Zhou of the past. After Li Mu helped Su He unify the Ghost Realm and establish a peace treaty with the Great Zhou, the Zhou continent situation had completely changed. Apart from the demon sect, which the common people couldn't come into contact with, the Great Zhou's internal and external troubles had been resolved. The common people could completely relax and live in peace and contentment. This was the best time that the Zhou continent had experienced in the past several thousand years. And the Great Zhou was destined to be the dynasty that the common people trusted the most and recognized the most. When the common people trusted the country and were proud of the people of the country, the psychokinesis of the people would naturally reach a peak. Within the large cauldron in the center of the ancestral shrine, the psychokinesis dragon was napping. Its body was abnormally thick and solid, not inferior to the one given to him by the young emperor. This meant that the psychokinesis spirit within the ancestral shrine of the Great Zhou had matured. Li Mu recalled this matter and said to the empress, "There is one more thing that this subject forgot to tell your majesty." In order to thank this subject, the young emperor gave this subject a valuable gift. Zhou Yi looked at him and asked suspiciously, "He wants to marry his daughter to you?" Li Mu was speechless. "What is your majesty thinking?" He gave this subject a strand of emperor's qi. Li Mu extended his hand, and another golden dragon flew out from the cauldron. The moment this dragon appeared in the ancestral shrine, the enormous dragon within the cauldron opened its eyes. 2 rays of golden light flashed as it looked at Li Mu. To be exact, it was looking at the other golden dragon beside him. The golden dragon released by Li Mu paused for a moment before letting out a roar and flying towards the golden dragon in the cauldron. The 2 dragons instantly intertwined with each other, biting each other with their dragon heads. Chapter 6:13. Li Mu didn't expect that the 2 golden dragons would fight and devour each other as soon as they met. It was only then that he realized that the Emperor Qi was the spirit of telekinesis. They were formed from telekinesis. Whenever 2 spirits of Emperor Qi met, they would devour each other to strengthen themselves. This was an instinct of telekinesis spirits. Li Mu and the Empress wanted to stop them, but it was too late. The 2 bodies of Emperor Qi had already merged together, and there was no distinction between them. Only the heads were still biting and devouring each other. Later, they even plunged into the cauldron. The cauldron at the center of the ancestral temple shook violently. Soon, a deafening dragon roar came from within. A blinding golden light shot out from the cauldron. It passed through the roof of the ancestral temple and tried to escape into the depths of the clouds. The Empress reached out and clenched her hand. An invisible hand seemed to appear in the void and captured the golden light. In the next moment, the telekinesis spirit in the ancestral temple showed its original form again. The golden light on its body was even more dazzling. Its body was also thicker than before. However, only one of the original 2 golden dragons was left. It was obvious that one of them had been devoured by the other. Li Mu and the Empress had already discussed who the Emperor Qi belonged to. The Empress had already refined a strand of Emperor Qi, so a new one was useless to her. Li Mu had his own telekinesis cultivation, so he didn't need the Emperor Qi to break through to the next level. The first strand of Emperor Qi in the ancestral temple was originally prepared for Lu Hanyan. A few years later, the second strand of Emperor Qi was left for Li Qing. After Linglong's father gave Li Mu a strand of Emperor's Qi, there was no need for them to split it evenly. Now that one strand of Emperor's Qi had been devoured, there was only one left. Who should he give it to? Moreover, after the 2 strands of Emperor Qi merged, a new telekinesis spirit was born. It was twice as strong as before. With their current cultivation, they couldn't bear the impact of such a huge telekinesis. The Empress saw this and said, "It seems that only you can refine this strand of Emperor Qi." Li Mu thought for a while and nodded. In the past, he did not consider refining it himself because he would reach the 7th realm sooner or later. He did not want to waste a strand of Emperor's Qi. The sooner the people around him reached the Transcendence realm, the sooner he could rest assured. However, his experiences during this period of time made Li Mu gradually realize that his cultivation was still not enough. Now that he was at the 6th realm, his previous enemies were no longer a threat to him. However, new enemies were constantly appearing. Not to mention the 3 ancestors of the demonic Dao and Tianjizi. Even a peak transcendent expert like Xianming could only run away if he saw them. He needed to at least reach the 7th level transcendent realm in order to have the confidence to stand on this continent. The time it would take to refine the Emperor Qi was uncertain. It could take months or years. This strand of Emperor Qi was far more powerful than ordinary mature Emperor Qi, so it could take even longer. Before he went into seclusion to refine the Emperor Qi, he had to arrange everything around him. Li Mu left the palace. When he returned home, the people of the divine capital were still discussing the dragon roar that came from the palace, as well as the golden light that shot into the sky. In a certain mansion of the Shao clan, several members of the Shao clan reluctantly looked away from the palace. King Ping's expression was solemn as he said in a deep voice, "The Emperor Qi has formed." It had only been a few years since the last strand of Emperor Qi was formed. This was the fastest strand of Emperor Qi to form since the establishment of the Great Zhou. It should have been something to be happy about, but the Shao clan could not bring themselves to be happy. This was because the Emperor Qi in the Shao clan's ancestral temple no longer belonged to them. As they gradually moved away from the center of power in the Great Zhou, they had long lost their former glory. At the same time, a few sighs came from the Zhou mansion. 3 days later, at Mount Baiyun. In the ancestral court of Fulu School, Xian Jizi looked at Li Mu with some doubt and asked, "Junior brother, what's the matter that requires you to invite all the Grand Supreme Elders of our 5 sects to the sect?" Li Mu was about to go into seclusion to refine the Emperor Qi. He did not know how long it would take for him to come out of seclusion. Before he went into seclusion, there was still an important matter to take care of. The 2 Grand Supreme Elders of Fulu School were nearing the end of their lifespans. The Grand Supreme Elders of the other 4 sects were not much better off than them. Before he went into seclusion, Li Mu planned to use the Great Sky Stealing Formation to extend their lifespans. Although they might not be able to reach the 8th level, as long as they were alive, there would be endless possibilities. Spirit Array Sect. The sect master of Spirit Array Sect had just received a voice transmission from Xian Jizi. He asked, "What's the matter that requires the Grand Supreme Elders to go to Mount Baiyun? Can it be a few days later?" The Grand Supreme Elder just went into seclusion yesterday. In the voice transmission artifact, Xian Jizi said faintly, "Junior brother Ling Jizi obtained a lifespan extension technique from the demonic Dao. It can extend the Grand Supreme Elder's lifespans by 60 years. Since Martial Uncle is in seclusion, let's do it next time." The sect master of Spirit Array Sect was stunned for a moment, then immediately said, "No need, no need. When will he go into seclusion again? I'll go call him now." A heavenly fate talisman that could extend the lifespan of a transcendent expert by 3 to 5 years was a priceless treasure. What was the concept of extending one's lifespan by one 60-year cycle? It wasn't extending one's lifespan, but rather an opportunity and a possibility. Even if the Prime Elder was in secluded meditation, the headmaster would still call him out. Not long after, 2 streams of light flew out of the ancestral court of Spirit Array Sect and headed north. The speed of the light was unbelievably fast. Some of the elders of Spirit Array Sect looked at the sky with shock in their eyes. They muttered, "This speed, the Grand Supreme Elder's cultivation has improved again." In a quarter of an hour, 2 streams of light each from Spirit Array Sect, Pill Cauldron Sect, and South Sect and North Sect flew towards Mount Baiyun at the maximum speed of the 7th realm. A day later, on the plaza of the main peak of Mount Baiyun, a huge formation had been set up. Apart from Xuanzong, 10 Grand Supreme Elders of the 6 Daoist sects sat cross-legged in the formation. Their eyes were filled with excitement and anticipation. Each formation could extend the lifespan of 10 people at most, which was the number of Grand Supreme Elders of the 5 sects. Li Mu originally wanted his nominal master, Fu Daozi, to come along. However, he was in seclusion to comprehend the Fu Lu Great Dao. If he forcefully broke through, all his previous efforts would be wasted. If he did not come out before the end of his life, Li Mu would have no choice but to forcefully wake him up. Under everyone's gaze, Li Mu struck a spell into the formation. The entire formation flickered with white light. The spiritual energy of several mountains of supreme-grade spiritual jades that were set up at the key positions of the formation was instantly depleted and turned into dust. Li Mu's attention was completely focused on the formation. The supreme-grade spiritual jades required for this formation had almost emptied the 5 sects' assets. If it failed, they would not be able to set it up again in a short period of time. Fortunately, the next scene did not disappoint Li Mu. Above their heads, a dense whirlpool gradually appeared. Strands of unknown energy were attracted from the other side of the whirlpool and drilled into the bodies of the people in the formation. In the next moment, a magical scene appeared. The Grand Supreme Elder's white hair gradually turned black. The frowns on their faces lessened and the spots disappeared. The lethargy and death aura on their bodies also gradually disappeared. Outside the formation, everyone's breathing began to become heavy. How could any cultivator resist the temptation of having an extra 60 years of lifespan? Everyone's attention was on the Grand Supreme Elders. Only Li Mu's gaze was fixed on the slowly disappearing spatial vortex in the void. The energy that allowed the Grand Supreme Elders to reverse time was something he had never seen in the real world. It was like spiritual energy, but much purer than spiritual energy. Moreover, no matter how pure the spiritual energy was, it did not have the effect of reversing time. Energy would not appear for no reason. Where did this mysterious energy come from? There had been demonic cultivators who had tried to find the answer to this question. Without exception, they had all died on the way. This vortex seemed calm, but it contained an endless and violent spatial power. Whether it was the physical body or the primordial spirit, once touched, it would immediately be crushed and devoured. Not even a trace of residue would be left. Not long after, the spiritual energy was exhausted. The spatial vortex above the formation slowly dissipated. The void returned to calmness as if nothing had happened. However, the 10 Grand Supreme Elders sitting cross-legged in the square had undergone a great change. Although they had not recovered to their prime, they were no longer old men with one foot in the grave. Most of the wrinkles on their faces had disappeared, and their hair had turned black. Their laughter, full of energy, echoed throughout the main peak. Chapter 6:14. Feeling the new vitality in their bodies, the 2 Grand Supreme Elders of Lu School felt extremely complicated. 2 years ago, they had a premonition that the end of their lives was near. They had planned to pass on their cultivation to the disciples of the school and make one last contribution to the school before they died, passing on their lifetime's cultivation and comprehension. If Li Mu had not advised them at that time, they would not be where they were today. At the same time, they felt pity for the ancestors of the school who had died because of the end of their lifespans. If Li Mu had been there at that time, they would not have had to sacrifice themselves. The two of them looked at Li Mu, their eyes filled with gratification. These old fellows had already been surpassed by the younger generation of the school. But this was a good thing. The future of Lu School rested on his shoulders. The other elders also looked at Li Mu, then cupped their hands together and said solemnly, "Many thanks, Martial Nephew." He had helped them extend their lifespans by 60 years. This was a debt that could not be repaid. In addition to the debt of deciphering the heavenly tomes, they had unknowingly owed Lu School so much. Li Mu smiled at the crowd and said, "We're all family. Martial uncles, there's no need to be so polite." Xian Jizi also smiled and said, "I've already had the disciples prepare a banquet in the main hall to congratulate martial uncles. Martial uncles, please come." After the banquet, the Grand Supreme Elders of the various sects did not leave. Instead, they stayed on Mount Baiyun and discussed the Tao with each other. Every few days, they would give lectures on the Tao at the various peaks. Any disciple of Lu School could go and listen according to their interests. Some cultivators who came to Mount Baiyun to buy Lu could also listen if they wanted to. Although Lu School also had experts in the Tao of pills, formations, artifact forging, and body refining, their attainments could not compare to the Grand Supreme Elders of the various sections. Originally, the top experts of the various sects would only give lectures during the Daoist conference. At that time, the various sects would at most send experts at the level of first seat. The Grand Supreme Elders of the various sects would personally give lectures. This was a treatment that even Xuanzong had never received. Unknowingly, Lu School had replaced Xuanzong as the invisible leader of Taoism. Once the news of the Grand Supreme Elders of the various sects preaching at Mount Baiyun spread, countless cultivators flocked to Mount Baiyun. It was an unprecedented event. The news quickly spread to Xuanzong. Ever since Li Mu had caused a ruckus at the exchange meeting, Xuanzong's situation had deteriorated day by day. Great Zhou did not allow Xuanzong to open a training ground in the country. Without a training ground, it would be very difficult to recruit new disciples, and the sect would not have fresh blood flowing in. A huge market had been built outside of Luoyang. Because of its unique geographical advantage and the unconditional support of various sects, almost 90% of Xuanzong's business was taken away. A month ago, Xuanzong's market had been closed. Not only that, but in such a short time, Xuanzong had gone from being the #1 sect of Taoism that everyone envied to being hated by humans and demons. Now, not only the Yao Kingdom, but even the Ghost Realm had forbidden Xuanzong disciples from entering. Before offending Li Mu, no one had thought that things would turn out this way. No one had thought that he could make the Empress of Great Zhou, the Queen of Demons, and the Master of the Ghost Realm stand against Xuanzong. What did he rely on? Now, the Grand Supreme Elders of the various sects were preaching at Fulu School. This was tantamount to directly admitting that Fulu School was the true leader of Taoism. For the disciples of Xuanzong, this was something that was difficult to accept. In the past few days, many different voices had appeared within Xuanzong. More and more people were dissatisfied with Grand Supreme Elder Dao Qingzi's actions and demanded that Qing Qingzi be handed over to redeem Xuanzong's reputation. However, Grand Supreme Elder stubbornly insisted on having his own way. After severely punishing several elders who had opposed him, no one dared to bring up the matter again. On the surface, Mount Penglai appeared to be peaceful, but everyone knew that Xuanzong was no longer the Xuanzong of the past. In a Dao palace floating on the highest mountain peak, Dao Qingzi sat on the sect master's chair. Half of his hair was black and the other half was white. His entire person gave off an evil aura. The white-haired half of his face hesitated and said, "Let's hand over Qing Qingzi. This was our fault in the first place." The black-haired half of his face snorted coldly and said in a cold voice, "As long as Uncle Master is here, Xuanzong will still be the #1 sect in the world, even if the 5 sects join forces. When we step into the Dao integration stage, we will destroy the demon Dao and unite Taoism. That's not what I want." You never fight for what you want. Otherwise, the sect master's position would have been yours long ago. Listen to me from now on. Only I can lead Xuanzong to greatness again. In the main hall, the same voice alternated with different tones, making the atmosphere of the main hall particularly gloomy. On Baiyun Peak of Fulu School, Li Mu was enjoying his last moments of comfort before going into seclusion. He had already told Lu Hanyan and Li Qing that he was about to go into seclusion to refine the Emperor Qi. The 2 strands of Emperor Qi that he had prepared for them had swallowed each other and become one. It was no longer something that they could withstand. After receiving Ao Qing's inheritance, Li Mu's body was comparable to that of a dragon. Other than the Empress, he was the only one who could withstand this strengthened version of Emperor Qi. With the Empress's current cultivation, unless she had more than 10 strands of Emperor's Qi, her cultivation would not improve much if she only refined 1 or 2 strands. In comparison, Li Mu needed it more. Li Mu didn't choose Baiyun Peak as the location for his seclusion. Instead, he chose Shandu. He had been running around these days and didn't have time to improve his relationship with the Empress. Now, he had to go into seclusion for a long time. In that case, it was best to go into seclusion near the Empress. If he made her unhappy, Li Mu would suffer. Bringing Lu Hanyan, Li Qing, Wan Wan, and Xiaobai back to Shendu, Li Mu accompanied them for a few more days. Then he was about to go into seclusion. On the last night before he went into seclusion, he once again enjoyed the blessings of having multiple partners. In the morning, both sides were filled with warmth and fragrance. Lu Hanyan gently drew circles on his chest and asked, "How long will it take this time?" Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "Within a year." When the Empress refined the Emperor Qi, she took half a year. Phantom Princess had also been in seclusion for several months. They had only refined a normal strand of Emperor Qi. Li Mu's strengthened version of Emperor Qi should take longer to refine. In the Li residence, when the sun rose to the middle of the sky, Li Mu walked out of his room. He walked into the courtyard and touched Wan Wan and Xiaobai's heads. He said, "Cultivate well and wait for me at home." After hugging them gently, Li Mu left the house and walked into the palace. The Empress was already waiting for him in Changle Palace. Li Mu gave the Dao Bell and Sun shooting bow to the Empress and said, "Just in case, take these 2 magic treasures." Although her cultivation hadn't reached the 8th realm, she had the strongest defense and attack magic treasures. Even if the 3 patriarchs of the demonic way came, they couldn't do anything to her. He would be in seclusion in the underground palace behind Changle Palace. That was where the Empress usually cultivated. Li Mu looked at the Empress and said, "I'll go now." Zhou nodded and said, "Go." Li Mu turned around. Zhou suddenly said, "Wait." Li Mu turned around and asked, Is there anything else, Your Majesty? Zhou Yi tiptoed and kissed him gently on the lips. She said, "Come out soon." At the entrance of Changle Palace, Ling Long saw this scene and suddenly blushed. Mr. May glanced at her and asked, "Why are you blushing?" Princess Ling Long clasped her hands together and said excitedly, "I don't know, but I'm just happy." Ridiculous. Lord May no longer paid any attention to her. When he looked at Shangguan Li, he was stunned and said in surprise, "Ali, why are you blushing too?" Chapter 6:15. Great Show Imperial Palace. Underground Palace. Li Mu sat cross-legged on the ground, watching the heavy stone door slowly close. The Empress, Li, exquisite, and the others also disappeared through the door. Beside him was a mountain of spiritual jade. With a thought, Li Mu summoned the image of a golden dragon. As soon as the dragon appeared, it tried to escape, but the underground palace was sealed off by an array. It could only scurry around in this space before it was bounced back by the array on the wall. After a series of collisions, it roared and charged into Li Mu's body. As the telekinesis spirit entered his body, Li Mu's body radiated golden light, as dazzling as the sun. This energy was extremely violent, completely different from the gentle telekinesis he had absorbed in the past. Boundless telekinesis rampaged through his body, as if it wanted to destroy everything. Fortunately, Li Mu's body was comparable to that of the dragon race. After the baptism of the dragon marrow, this pain was nothing to him. Not long after, a golden cocoon formed on the outside of his body. The golden cocoon emitted a faint fluorescent light. The spiritual jade in the underground palace seemed to be attracted by something. The spiritual qi within slowly dissipated and was absorbed into the golden cocoon. The underground palace fell into a long silence. 1 month. 2 months. 3 months. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. In this half a year, the Zhu continent was peaceful. The people of the Great Zhou lived in peace and contentment. In the ancestral temple of the imperial palace, the new imperial qi had already taken shape. In the past, the imperial court would have needed more than 10 years to condense telekinesis. Now, it only took the imperial court half a year. In this half a year, the imperial court issued many policies. The imperial court opened medical centers in the various counties and counties, reducing the majority of the people's medical expenses. At the same time, welfare homes and shelters were established in the various counties to support the elderly and orphans abandoned by their parents. Some people who lived in poverty and found it difficult to survive were also helped by the imperial court. The introduction of a series of policies benefiting the people made them trust the imperial court more and more. The unity of the people's hearts reached a peak since the founding of the Great Zhou. When the empress had just ascended the throne, there was a saying among the people that if a woman became empress, yin and yang would be reversed, and heaven and earth would be in rebellion. Now, the common people could no longer hear such voices. The wise and mighty Her Majesty the Empress and official Li, who wholeheartedly served the people, were in perfect harmony. It was because of this that the people of the Great Zhou's 36 counties could live such good lives today. If anyone dared to criticize this, they would be drowned in the mouths of the people even without the imperial court taking action. Great Zhou's Shendu. The citizens of Shendu had not heard from Lord Li for half a year. After disappearing for half a year, the people did not forget about him. Everyone knew that they were living and working in peace now because there were countless people like Lord Li who were silently working for them in the dark. They did not know the names of these people, nor did they know their identities, but they definitely existed. They used their backbone to prop up the Great Zhou. On the streets of Fairy's capital, Wan Wan and Xiao Bai each held a stick of candied hawthorn as they followed behind Lu Hanyan and Li Qing. Wan Wan licked the icing on the surface and muttered, "Young master has been in seclusion for half a year. When will he come out?" Xiao Bai gently took a bite of the hawthorn and said, "Benefactor said that he will only come out in about a year." Wan Wan sighed and said, "Then Miss will have to think about him for another half a year." Lu Hanyan turned her head and glanced at her saying, "I didn't. It was clearly you who was thinking about him." Wan Wan said, "Then who was the one who called out young master's name in her dream last night and even touched and kissed me?" Lu Hanyan glanced at Li Qing beside her and blushed. She quickly covered Wan Wan's mouth and transmitted her voice. "That was your dream." Wan Wan's mouth was covered by Lu Hanyan. Xiao Bai hurriedly continued to eat her candied hawthorn. In her heart, she felt that it was nothing to dream about Benefactor. She also dreamed about Benefactor many times. Sometimes when she slept with Wan Wan, she would also think of Wan Wan as him. However, she would at most hug and not touch and kiss. Walking on the streets of Chengdu, the girls suddenly lost the mood to shop and looked in the direction of the Imperial Palace at the same time. At this time, in Chang'e Palace, Zhongling was running around barefooted and playing with Cheng Xin. Princess Linglong was sitting where Li Mu was originally sitting. She replaced the Empress and focused on reading the memorials. Zhou Yi leaned on the dragon throne, her eyes lost. No one knew what she was thinking. Shangguanli stood behind her, her eyes also unfocused. Mr. Mei stood behind Zhou Yi on the other side. He was bored and mumbled, "It's been half a year. I wonder when Li Mu will come out of seclusion." Without Li Mu, the Imperial Palace was extremely quiet. In this half a year, the Empress and Ali's smiles had decreased. She also felt that everything was boring. The atmosphere in Chang'e Palace was quiet and cold. Until a certain moment, a powerful aura suddenly appeared and rushed into the sky from underground. At this moment, Zhou Yi looked up. A long-lost smile finally appeared on her face. At the same time, all the people in Chengdu felt their hearts suddenly palpitating. All the cultivators, no matter what they were doing, looked up immediately with shock. What a powerful aura! It seems like someone broke through. It's the aura of a breakthrough. Such a powerful aura. Is it a breakthrough to the 6th or 7th level? The aura coming from the Imperial Palace shook Chengdu. The deans of the 4 academies also felt this aura immediately. 4 streaks of light flew into the sky and gathered together. An old man asked, "It's him?" Another middle-aged man said, "It's him." A middle-aged scholar said, "Other than him, who else could it be?" The 4 of them were familiar with this aura. When the Empress refined the Emperor aura and broke through, they had already seen it once. The difference was that this aura was even stronger than the Empress back then. Although most people didn't know, it wasn't a secret to them that the Empress had given the mature Emperor aura in the ancestral temple to Li Mu. As the deans of the 4 academies, one of their responsibilities was to protect the Emperor aura from outsiders. Logically speaking, even if the Empress didn't return the Emperor aura to the Xiao family, she should have passed it to the Great Zhou ancestral temple. However, when the Empress gave the Emperor aura to Li Mu, they didn't stop her. Firstly, the Great Zhou was where it was today because of the Empress and Li Mu. This Emperor aura was also nurtured and condensed by them. They had the right to decide what to do with it. Secondly, the Empress's strength had soared in the past 2 years. Even if the deans of the 4 academies worked together, they were still no match for her. Whether it was power or strength, she stood at the peak of the Great Zhou. Although Li Mu was a subject, he was only 1 title away from the Empress. It was indisputable that he had inherited the Emperor aura. The 4 of them looked at each other and flew to the Imperial Palace to congratulate her. The 4 deans were of noble status. They didn't need to announce their entry to the Imperial Palace. As soon as they entered Chang'e Palace, they saw 2 figures hugging each other tightly. In an instant, their expressions became awkward. Although there were some things that everyone was well aware of, it was the first time they had seen it with their own eyes. When Zhou Qiong and Li Mu hugged each other, they were facing the door of the hall. Zhou Qiong raised her head and frowned. The 4 deans' hearts skipped a beat and they immediately retreated. Not long after, the Empress's voice came from inside the palace. "Come in." The 4 of them walked into Chang'e Palace again and saw the Empress sitting majestically on the dragon throne. A young figure stood in the palace. The 4 deans clasped their hands awkwardly and said, "Congratulations, Lord Li. Congratulations, Your Majesty." Chapter 616. In the past, the 4 academies could suppress the imperial power. Now, the 4 deans could only lower their heads before Li Mu and the Empress. The Empress cultivation had reached the peak of transcendence. If she really fought, she wouldn't be weaker than Xian Ming. 1 strand of Emperor Qi could make a 5th realm cultivator reach the 7th realm. 2 strands of Emperor Qi not only allowed Li Mu to transcendence, but his spiritual power was also far stronger than normal 7th realm cultivators. Now, if he met Xian Ming again, Li Mu could fight her without the sun shooting bow. The 4 deans were quickly sent away by the Empress. After not seeing each other for half a year, Zoe wanted to find a quiet place to spend some time with Li Mu. However, she also knew that Li Mu didn't belong to her alone. She pretended not to care and said, "They should know that you're out. Go back first." Li Mu transmitted his voice. "Then I'll come find you later." Zoe nodded and said, "I'll wait for you here." The Seventh Realm's divine telekinesis was enormous. Li Mu's divine telekinesis scanned the area and found several familiar auras on the streets of the divine capital. He formed a seal with one hand and appeared on the streets of the divine capital with just a thought. "Master! Savior!" Wan Wan and Xiao Bai saw the figure that they'd been dreaming of for a long time suddenly appear beside them. However, they seemed to remember something and stopped in the air. They stood beside Li Qing and Lu Hanyan. Li Mu stepped forward and hugged them. He said softly, "Sorry for making you wait." A moment later, the family returned to the residence. Wan Wan happily wanted to follow Li Mu into the inner courtyard, but Xiao Bai grabbed her wrist. Wan Wan quickly realized something. She sat down at the stone table in the courtyard and rested her chin on her hands. She mumbled, "Xiao Bai, when do you think Master will realize that we've grown up?" Xiao Bai giggled and said, "I'm not in a hurry. I'll be Savior's person sooner or later anyway." Wan Wan rolled her eyes at him and said, "It's because you're not in a hurry that the other fox got ahead of you. You're such a disgrace to the little fox. You should be more careful in the future." After the wedding, this was the first time Li Mu had been separated from them for so long. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. What happened next was naturally something that Wan Wan and Xiao Bai had to avoid for the time being. Li Mu had obtained the dual cultivation technique from Ao Qing and the Demonic Path's heavenly book. It came in handy this time. His cultivation had already surpassed Lu Hanyan and Li Qing by a lot. The process of dual cultivation did not improve Li Mu's cultivation much, but it was greatly beneficial to them. Dual cultivation was essentially a fusion of yin and yang. If one was stronger and the other was weaker, it would be beneficial to the weaker party. If their strength was similar, both parties would benefit greatly from it. When he and the Empress reached that stage, perhaps the opportunity for them to reach the 8th level would lie in dual cultivation. Although the 8th level was not the end of cultivation, it was far too difficult to reach the 8th level in today's world where spirit qi was so scarce. The path of advancement through normal cultivation had almost been blocked, and there were no shortcuts like Emperor Qi to take. It could be considered the ceiling of all cultivators. Dual cultivation was different from the matter between men and women. They had to guide yin and yang qi to circulate in their bodies at all times, which was extremely taxing on their divine senses. In less than 4 hours, the two women's divine senses were exhausted and they fell into a deep sleep. Li Mu's divine sense was much stronger than theirs, so he did not feel much fatigue. No wonder Ao Qing had been merciful all those years ago. He majored in dual cultivation. 2 companions could not satisfy him at all, nor could they support his cultivation. After covering them with blankets, Li Mu's figure appeared in Changle Palace not long after. Mr. Mei, Ali, Cheng Xian, Ling Long, and even Zhong Ling were not here. Only the Empress sat on the dragon throne, absent-mindedly reading a book. The moment Li Mu appeared in the palace, a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Li Mu took a step and was already by her side. Holding her slender waist, he bent down and kissed her. This was his first forceful kiss to the Empress. Before Li Mu went into seclusion, other than the Empress taking the initiative to kiss him, Li Mu almost never had the chance to kiss her. The main reason was that she was too strong. Li Mu could be forcefully kissed, but it was impossible for him to forcefully kiss her. Now, Li Mu was finally at the same level as her. The situation of women being stronger than men was finally going to change. He had waited for this day for a long time. Zhou Yi immediately understood Li Mu's thoughts. She reached out 2 fingers and pressed them against Li Mu's lips. Snorting, she said, "You think you can suppress me just because you're at the 7th level?" Having been seen through, Li Mu said guiltily, "I didn't mean that." Zhou Yi stood up and said, "Good. I also want to know how much you've improved in the past 6 months." Li Mu rubbed his hands and said eagerly, "That's not good." The strength of the Empress had once caused him to dream that their identities had been reversed. If he could really defeat the Empress, the shameful history of him lying in the Empress's arms in his dreams would completely become a thing of the past. Not long after, in the 9 heavens squall above the divine capital, 2 indistinguishable figures were entangled in the 9 heavens squall. The light of spells blossomed into brilliant fireworks in the sky. However, it was daytime now, so the commoners couldn't detect it. The cultivators with high cultivation in the divine capital could feel the waves of mana coming from above. Some people flew up to investigate curiously, but when they got close to the Nine Heavens squall, they flew back down dejectedly. The Nine Heavens squall above could not only destroy the physical body, but also injure the primordial spirit. It was a forbidden area for cultivators. Those who could fight in the Nine Heavens squall were all elites among elites. Just the aftershocks of a battle of that level could destroy their bodies and souls. First, there was a mysterious elite breaking through, and then there was a battle between top elites in the Nine Heavens squall. This aroused endless suspicion in the hearts of the cultivators in the divine capital. At this moment, above the divine capital, on a white cloud, Li Mu was pinned down by the Empress. All his mana was sealed. He could only beg for mercy. Your Majesty, I admit defeat. I admit defeat. Reality proved that after breaking through to the seventh realm, Li Mu was still overconfident. Relying on his many Daoist techniques and rich battle experience, he even dared to fight the 5 patriarchs of the demonic way. Then, he was taught a lesson by the Empress. There was no distinction between him and the Empress. Apart from not telling her his background, the Empress also knew the remarkable Daoist techniques that he knew. Fighting with the Empress, Li Mu could not gain any advantage at all. While his transcendence energy far exceeded that of a newly ascended 7th-level cultivator, there was still a considerable gap between him and the Empress. From the very beginning, he had been firmly suppressed by the Empress. Now, even his body was being pressed beneath her. Facing the Empress, he could not take out the sun-shooting bow, so he could only admit defeat. Zoe looked down at him and said indifferently, "If you want to suppress me, wait until your cultivation surpasses mine." With that, she leaned down and kissed him domineeringly. Walking on the streets of the divine capital, Li Mu sighed softly. That dream of his would probably last for a while longer. The Empress was different from others. She was a woman and also an Empress. She was unwilling to be under anyone at any time, even if that person was Li Mu. If there was a forced kiss between them, then the one who had the strength to take the initiative would definitely be her. On the way back to the Li residence, Li Mu passed by a street corner. Suddenly, he felt something and looked ahead. There was a flag erected at the corner of the street with the words, "Divine Strategy and Wondrous Calculation," written on it. A sloppy Taoist priest sat behind the flag, leaning against the wall and looking listlessly at the pedestrians on the street. Compared to when he first met the sloppy Taoist priest, the current him was filled with a thick aura of lethargy. More of his hair was white, and brown spots appeared on his face. This was a sign that his lifespan was reaching its end. Looking at the sloppy Taoist priest, Li Mu could not help but sigh in his heart. When he first met the sloppy Taoist priest, he was only a mortal. If it were not for his reminder, Li Mu would probably have died from the scattering of his 7 souls. Later, Li Mu recruited him into the Department of Worship and gave him a talisman of divine secrets, which allowed him to temporarily extend his lifespan. But now, it seemed that he would not be able to break through before his lifespan ended. On the other hand, Li Mu had already broken through before him. Sometimes the path of cultivation was just this cruel. At the corner of the wall, the scruffy old Daoist priest sensed something and looked ahead, catching sight of a familiar figure. Seeing Li Mu again, he subconsciously wanted to check his cultivation. But when he used his spying ability, all he could see was a cloud of fog. Shocked, he even jumped up from the ground and said with a trembling voice, You. It didn't matter if the slovenly Taoist priest was there or not. Li Mu chuckled. He looked at the slovenly Taoist priest and said, "Go to Mount Baiyun and wait for me there." Watching Li Mu leave, the slovenly Taoist priest stroked his snow-white beard. Several years ago, when he was comprehending the great Tao on the streets of Yangqiu County, he had never imagined that his impulsive reminder would be rewarded so richly today. In the past, he had helped Li Mu. Today, Li Mu had helped him. The cycle of karma was wondrous. Half a month later, Li Mu temporarily bid farewell to the Empress. He brought Lu Hanyan and Li Qing back to Mount Baiyun. At this time, the slovenly Taoist priest had already become a guest elder of the Fulu school. According to Xianjizi, he had asked for it. The slovenly Taoist priest's strength was only below the 7th realm of the sect. Xianjizi did not refuse such a person who was willing to join the Fulu school, and because of his relationship with Li Mu. Within the Talisman Puppet sect, Violet Cloud Peak's Yu Quanzi only had 10 years of lifespan left. Li Mu asked Xianjizi to inform the other 4 sects, asking them to choose 2 first seats with the shortest lifespan. Once again, they set up a grand formation to help them extend their lifespan by 60 years. In this way, the Grand Elders of the 5 Daoist sects would not be affected by their lifespans for the next few decades. On the main peak of Mount Baiyun, Xianjizi looked at Li Mu and stroked the short beard on his chin. He said, "Since junior brother has successfully transcended, it is time for senior brother to give up the position of head teacher." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Senior brother, you should sit on the position of head teacher for now. I am used to being free and undisciplined. I am temporarily unable to bear the heavy responsibility of being head teacher." Although he shouldered the heavy responsibility of revitalizing the sect and had been in charge of all matters of the Fulu school, in reality, he was no different from the head teacher. However, on the surface, the Fulu school still needed Xianjizi to act as the face. After all, Xianjizi's image was that of an immortal Daoist senior. He was not like Li Mu, who had no other good points other than his good looks. Although Xianjizi was helpless, he did not raise any objections. On the surface, he was still the head teacher of the Fulu school, but in reality, Li Mu was the one in charge. As a disciple of the Fulu school, he could only obey Li Mu's arrangements. After arranging the matters of Mount Baiyun, Li Mu went to the Yao Nation. A month before he came out of seclusion, Phantom Princess had already come out. Now, she was a 7-tailed fox and was the true queen of the demons. The 4 great tribes of the Yao Nation had already completed the incorporation of the demon clans. Since the White Emperor, the Yao Nation, which had been in chaos for 3,000 years, was once again unified. For some reason, both Phantom Princess and the Empress wanted to conquer Li Mu in terms of strength. After half a year, this was the first time he met Phantom Princess. The two of them did not linger and reminisce about old times. Instead, they engaged in a battle under Phantom Princess's request. Although Li Mu was helpless, he could only agree. There was no doubt about the result. They both advanced to the 7th level. Phantom Princess only refined 1 spirit of telekinesis, while Li Mu refined 2. The difference between her and Li Mu in terms of spiritual power was like the difference between Li Mu and the Empress. However, Li Mu's attitude towards Phantom Princess was different from the Empress. In terms of strength, Li Mu had never conquered the Empress. All along, he had been the one being conquered. Therefore, he was very eager to conquer the Empress once. Whether it was strength, intelligence, or other aspects, he had already conquered Phantom Princess countless times. He did not have any desire to win against her. In order to take care of her emotions, Li Mu tied with her. Phantom Princess said with some dissatisfaction, "I thought I could finally win against you this time. Why did you advance so quickly?" Li Mu held her hand and asked, "If I don't increase my cultivation, how can I protect you in the future?" Phantom Princess only acted coquettishly in front of Li Mu. Then she asked expectantly, "Tell me, between me and Zhou Yi, who is stronger?" She did not have a clear understanding of how strong the Empress was. That was why she asked such a question. Li Mu revealed an awkward but polite smile and said, "She is she, you are you. You both have your strengths. Don't compare everything." Chapter 6:18. Li Mu had only stayed in the Yao Nation for 3 days. Although the Queen of Demons was fragrant, the Master of the Ghost Realm was not to be trifled with. If Suhi knew that Li Mu had come out of seclusion but had not gone to find her, and was instead fooling around with Phantom Princess in the Yao Nation, things would get serious. The more beauties around him, the more Li Mu wanted to be impartial. He could not let anyone feel that he was neglected. The Ghost Realm was shrouded in that strange fog and could not send messages directly. Unlike Phantom Princess and the Empress, who could contact Li Mu at any time, she still did not know that Li Mu had come out of seclusion. After leaving the Yao Nation, Li Mu headed southwest. Fengdu City, which originally belonged to the Rakshasa king, was now the ghost capital of the Ghost Realm. It was the closest to the Great Zhou, and the space there was the most stable. The teleportation formation of the Ghost Realm was built 200 miles outside of Fengdu City. Li Mu had wanted to build it directly in Fengdu City, but the space of the Ghost Realm had been shattered after the ancient war. It could not withstand the power of space. Once the teleportation was activated, it would be swept into the space-time turbulence due to the collapse of space. Considering this reason, Li Mu built the teleportation formation at the edge of the Ghost Realm. 200 miles was not a long distance for the 7th Realm Rakshasa King, King Yenluo, and the others. If one of them was in trouble, the Ghost Realm would only be delayed in providing support. Li Mu's current speed could not be compared to half a year ago. Soon, the fog-shrouded Ghost Realm appeared in front of him. He stopped shrinking Earth into an inch and turned into a stream of light, flying into the fog. At this time, the fog outside Fengdu City was abnormally tumbling. Ming Yi, Ming Er, and Ming San faced each other from a distance. Ming San looked at him and said in a low voice, "We know that you were forced. This time, the 5th ancestor came to save you. Get out of the way." Ming Yi's expression was complicated. If the 5th ancestor came to the Ghost Realm to save him, she would not have abandoned them when she was threatened by Li Mu's bow. Him coming here was nothing more than taking advantage of Li Mu's closed seclusion to obtain the Ghost Domain Heavenly Book. The past half a year in Ghost Realm was completely different from when he was on Ghost Island. When working under the 3rd and 5th Patriarchs, he had to be respectful at all times and carry out all kinds of dangerous missions. But here, the Ghost Lord and Li Mu did not order him around. Although he did not get along well with the Rakshasa King and the other ghosts at first, they became friends as they interacted more often. Every few days, they would get together for a drink. He had never had such a leisurely and comfortable experience before. Although he didn't say a word, he stood in front of Ming Er and Ming San and didn't retreat. A soul spear condensed in his hand and he pointed it at the two from afar. Seeing this, Bayer asked angrily, "Bayer, have you betrayed Glory Sect?" Ming San's expression also darkened. He said, "Don't talk nonsense with him. Capture him and hand him over to the 5th ancestor." As soon as he finished speaking, the two rushed toward Bayer. The Yu and Ming elders' cultivations were about the same, so Bayer was soon at a disadvantage. At this moment, a cloud of black fog flew over from afar, and Rakshasa King's voice came from the fog. "Old ghost, don't be afraid. I'm here to help you." With Rakshasa King's help, the pressure on Ming Yi decreased, but Yenluo King, Yaksha King, and Azura King were a little flustered. The 5th ancestor of the demonic path came prepared this time. They knew the strength of Fengdu, and there were 6 7th realm cultivators with them, which was one more than them. In a battle of the same level, one more person could determine the outcome of the battle. The sky above Fengdu was covered by a huge black lotus. Suhi used the ghost controlling technique, but it was useless. With her current 6th realm cultivation, she could not participate in such a battle. Ming Yi and the 4 ghost kings were held back, while Xian Ming and another black-robed man suppressed the ghost servant. Xian Ming's strength was about the same as the ghost servant's, and the black-robed man's strength was not ordinary either. Even the powerful ghost servant was not a match for the two of them. He was injured several times, and his aura kept weakening. At a certain moment, Xian Ming whispered to the black-robed man, "You hold him back." As soon as he finished speaking, he left the battle and flew towards Su He, who was standing on the city wall of Fengdu. The ghost servant's expression changed. He wanted to teleport over, but he was stopped by the black-robed man. Xian Ming had already locked onto Su He's aura. He reached out his pale and slender hand to grab Su He. Just as he was about to touch Su He, a fist appeared from the void. Boom! The fist and palm collided, and a huge wave of dermic power swept out. It was absorbed by the array on the city wall, but the ground outside the city caved in. A man's figure appeared in front of the woman on the city wall. Xian Ming's expression changed slightly. The dermic power in this fist was not weaker than hers. Moreover, from the fist just now, she felt that the opponent's physical body was not weaker than hers. Other than corpse cultivators and dragons, she had never met anyone with such a strong physical body. After seeing the person's face clearly, Xian Ming's expression changed drastically. She retreated quickly, but the person followed closely behind her like a shadow. Li Mu was in seclusion to refine the emperor's qi. This was not a secret in the sage sect. However, Xian Ming did not expect that he would succeed so quickly. With a level 7 cultivation and that terrifying sun-shooting bow, she was no longer Li Mu's opponent. Facing Li Mu's close approach, her fingernails grew rapidly. Like 10 sharp swords, they stabbed toward Li Mu. For corpse cultivators, the most powerful thing was always their bodies. Xianming wanted to fight hand-to-hand, but Li Mu did not use any supernatural powers. Golden light flashed on his body. Golden light radiated from his arm and met Xianming's fingernails. Then a string of fire burst out in the void. Both of them retreated hundreds of feet. This attack was evenly matched. Li Mu let out a long breath. From now on, the history of him being suppressed by Xianming was gone. He did not take out the sun-shooting bow. With the sky-breaking spear in hand, he disappeared instantly. At the same time, a long sword appeared in Xianming's hand. She stabbed forward without any hesitation. Cold light flashed in the void. The tip of the sword and the spear collided. The aftershock spread out and even affected the other people's battle. Whether it was Luo King and the other cultivators of the demonic path, they all stopped fighting at the same time. They stood on two sides with clear lines of shock in their eyes. Ming Er and Ming San did not expect that Li Mu, who had to run away from them not long ago, could actually be on par with the 5 forefathers. Luo King and the others were even more shocked. More than half a year ago, Li Mu still had to rely on that terrifying bow to force the woman in white to retreat. However, in just half a year, he was able to fight the woman in white head-on without using that bow. Such speed of growth was truly shocking. In an instant, these two figures became the focus of everyone's eyes. Obviously, the outcome of this battle would determine the outcome of the two forces. Everyone in the field had a tacit understanding not to interfere. Li Mu felt a huge force coming from the tip of the spear. His body was bounced back again. The sword in her hand was obviously a magic treasure that was not inferior to the sky-breaking spear. Even Ao Xian would have to avoid a peak Xianming cultivation. Li Mu did not underestimate his opponent. He used the demon-slaying protection incantation and summoning wind and rain at the same time. In an instant, the space where Xianming was filled with wind and lightning. The rain was mixed with wind and lightning, and it swept towards her. The power of a past magic power executed by a level 7 cultivator was naturally extraordinary. Ming Er, Luo King, and the others looked at the area from afar and shuddered. This was a magic power that could seriously injure or even kill a level 7 cultivator. In the face of this magic power that even a level 7 cultivator would find difficult to resist, a wave of heat surged out of Xuanming's body. The wave of heat swept over, and the rain that fell on her evaporated instantly. The dark clouds above were also affected and dispersed. The wind that blew on her body could only make her hair flutter. Wherever the wave of heat passed, the wandering souls in the surroundings also disappeared instantly. The Azura King and the others who were watching the battle from afar were forced back into Fengdu City. White light flashed outside Li Mu's body. It formed a spherical shield that protected his body. Although this wave of heat could not hurt his body, Li Mu's clothes could not withstand it. If he was not careful, he would be naked with everyone present. In the two short exchanges, neither Li Mu nor Xianming had the upper hand. In a fight between cultivators of the same level, especially those at the peak of their cultivation, it was hard to determine the winner in a short time. There was almost no magic power that could be executed by a level 7 cultivator that could end a cultivator of the same level in an instant. The terrifying thing about the sun-shooting bow was its instantaneous explosive damage. No magic or Dao technique could achieve that. Li Mu and Xianming were hundreds of feet away from each other. They did not attack again. Both of them knew very well that under normal circumstances, neither of them could do anything to the other. They could only keep exhausting each other and gamble on who would be the first to die. Of course, this was only under normal circumstances. When Li Mu extended his hand and retrieved the sky-piercing spear, Xuanming's expression changed drastically. He waved his sleeves and swept up the few demon Dao cultivators beside him. His figure gradually faded. "Freeze!" At this moment, Li Mu said softly. His fading figure paused for a moment and then disappeared. But beside him, there were two figures who were left behind. Ming Er and Ming San stood in place, stunned. The Azura King, Yen Luo King, Rakshasa King, Yaksha King, Gu Yi, and the ghost servant slowly looked at them. She thought that Li Mu would yield because of this, but she realized that she was wrong. At this moment, Li Mu looked at Xianming and said, "Or you can choose to let her go. I will let you go." There was only Li Mu and the ghost servant. It was not realistic to keep Xianming and these people. It was better to exchange for Su He's spiritual corpse, which could solve one of her worries. Li Mu's words made Xianming sink into contemplation. Apparently, in Li Mu's heart, the heavenly book was more important than the woman's spiritual corpse. And this spiritual corpse was more important than her. If Li Mu didn't care about this spiritual corpse, one arrow could destroy her 10,000 years of effort. At that time, although Xianming's spiritual power would be exhausted, the ghost servant could protect him and retreat safely. Xianming pondered for a while and suddenly pushed Su He's spiritual corpse towards Li Mu. Then, he led the few people beside him and fled towards the south. Li Mu couldn't chase after Xianming because Su He's spiritual corpse was unconscious. Her body was burning red. Before Xianming left, he had planted the corpse fire poison in her body. If Li Mu didn't care about her and went to chase after Xianming, she would be burned to ashes by the corpse fire poison from the inside out. She was worthy of being one of the few old monsters who had lived for 10,000 years. She only used this trick to delay Li Mu. Li Mu held the spiritual corpse. Her eyebrows and hair were covered with white frost. Her body was gradually frozen. However, the ice layer close to her body quickly melted into water and then condensed again. Li Mu kept dispersing the corpse fire in her body and said to the ghost servant, "Let's go back first." He held the spiritual corpse and disappeared in a flash. At this time, Xianming's face was as cold as ice among the figures who were rushing to the South Sea. Because of Li Mu's appearance, the operation led by her had failed again. Every time she met Li Mu, he would become stronger. Now, in terms of spiritual power, he wasn't weaker than her. With the sun shooting bow, even she had to run away. Unknowingly, Li Mu's threat to the sage sect had surpassed Xuanzong. He had become their biggest enemy. After returning to the Ghost Island, she went straight to the high tower in the center. Not long after, on the high tower of the Ghost Island, the third forefather heard Xianming's words and slowly opened her closed eyes. She said, "Whether it's Xuanzong or Li Mu, don't worry about them. The two senior brothers are about to come out. You should also immediately go into seclusion to increase your cultivation. The curtain is about to open." Xianming's face was filled with joy. Senior brothers have finally come out. The third forefather nodded. Then she looked at the horizon and said in a low voice, "We have waited for 10,000 years for this day." Tianjizi, let's see how you will stop them when the time comes. Soon, Xianming flew out of the high tower. She looked at the man in black and said, "Ao Xian's sun shooting bow is in Li Mu's hands. You know what to do, right?" The man in black nodded and said, "I will return to the clan and inform the elders." The only thing that comforted Li Mu was that the demon sect's ancestors weren't ranked based on who was more powerful. Perhaps in ancient times, they were ranked based on strength. However, after so many generations, they would encounter all kinds of unexpected factors, causing them to be reborn at different times. This time, the third elder was the first to be reborn. He was also the strongest among the ancestors. The demon sect's first elder and second elder hadn't reached the 8th realm yet. This could be considered good news, but it wasn't entirely so. Combining the fragmented memories of Blood River and the words of the three elders of Yu and Ming, Li Mu knew that the demon sect's current strength might be at its peak in the past 10,000 years. This didn't refer to absolute strength. After all, 10,000 years ago, there were many 9th realm cultivators. Just one of them would be enough to destroy the current demon sect. At that time, the demon sect had countless powerful cultivators. Several 9th realm cultivators would appear at the same time. However, the cultivation world at that time was also full of powerful cultivators. The demon race, the dragon race, the ghost race, and the human race could all suppress the demon sect. Now, although the demon sect had declined, the entire cultivation world of the continent had declined even more. If the other two demon sect ancestors reached the 8th realm, they would be invincible and sweep the continent. It was only a matter of time before the demon sect's 3 elders reached the 8th realm. Thinking of this, Li Mu sighed softly. He was a little worried. When he formed an alliance with the demon nation, he and the Queen of 10,000 Demons were together. When he formed an alliance with the Ghost Realm, he and the Lord of the Ghost Realm were together. Li Mu thought carefully and felt that this matter should be considered at length. Chapter 623. At the bottom of the North Sea, thousands of miles away from White Cloud Mountain, Ao Feng looked coldly at the black dragon and said angrily, Ao Wu, that Li Mu's cultivation is no weaker than ours. Why didn't you tell us that there was such a powerful cultivator in the Lu school? If they had known, they would not have been in such a sorry state today. The black dragon said helplessly, Great Elder, please calm down. After I found out that the sun-shooting bow was in Li Mu's hands, I immediately returned to the clan to report. I didn't know that his cultivation was so strong, and I didn't know that there was another powerful cultivator in the Lu school who was no weaker than the two elders. Of course, he knew that Li Mu's cultivation was no weaker than the two elders. The reason he had deliberately concealed it was because of the fifth patriarch's instructions. Only by lowering the importance they placed on Li Mu, and causing them to misestimate the strength of Li Mu and the Lu school would they fail in their mission. Only then would the conflict between the Black Dragons and Li Mu be intensified. That was what he really wanted. The fact that the Lu school had another powerful cultivator was beyond his expectations. According to his plan, the two elders should have barged into the Lu school, fought a huge battle, and returned with serious injuries. From then on, the Black Dragons and the Lu school would have an irreconcilable feud. The fifth patriarch's mission would then be completed. At this moment the other Black Dragon elder said, The human race has an old saying, you can hide for a while, but you can't hide forever. I don't believe that he will be hiding in the Lu school forever. Ever since Ao Xian's ancestor had fallen, the Black Dragons had never stopped searching for the sun-shooting bow. For tens of thousands of years, although the Black Dragons claimed to be the noblest and most powerful race on the mainland, apart from the era of Ao Qing Dragon King and Ao Xian, the Black Dragons had never truly dominated the mainland. Once the sun-shooting bow was taken back, the Dark Dragon clan would regain the glory of Ao Xian's ancestor. Ao Yu pondered the importance of this matter and realized that he had been too careless in his actions this time. He had underestimated Li Mu's strength. He looked at the Black Dragon and said, The sun-shooting bow is ours. I can't wait that long. Ao Wu, return to the West Sea and invite the other two elders, Ao An, and the other Tier 6 juniors. It's time to let them know the strength of the dragon race. Yes. Ao Wu cupped his fists respectfully. The moment he turned around, his lips curled up slightly. Baiyun Mountain. Li Mu did not chase after the three black dragons. Based on his understanding of the dragon race and the fatal attraction of the sun-shooting bow, they would return sooner or later. In order to fight against the demonic Dao, the Dragon Clan was a force that must be won over, but that did not include the Black Dragon Clan. Because of the existence of the sun-shooting bow, the Black Dragon Clan and Li Mu were destined to be like fire and water. If he captured the three dragons now, it would inevitably alarm them, which would be detrimental to his plan of catching them all in one fell swoop. In the next few days, Baiyun Mountain was peaceful as usual. There were no unusual movements. Li Mu was also not in a hurry to enter seclusion. Instead, he went back and forth between Baiyun Mountain and Purple Cloud Peak, guiding the cultivation of the elders and preaching to the low-level disciples. In terms of cultivation knowledge, there was probably no one in the world who could compare to Li Mu. These young disciples represented the future of Fulu School. At the beginning of their cultivation, it was very necessary to guide them on the correct path of cultivation and prevent them from taking the wrong path. Li Mu did not just teach Fulu blindly. He talked about alchemy, artifact refinement, body refinement, mystical abilities, and the path of cultivation. Interest was equally important. He hoped that the disciples in the sect would be able to find the path of cultivation that they liked at the beginning of their cultivation. Every time he preached, there would be no empty seats in the training hall. Most of the disciples could only float in the air. The disciples of the other peaks could only envy Baiyun Mountain and Purple Cloud Peak. This was because the heads of these two peaks were Elder Lu and Elder Li. Uncle Master Ling Jizi often appeared here. Aside from the routine preaching, it was very convenient for them to ask Uncle Master Ling Jizi if they had any questions about their daily cultivation. In the crowd, two new female disciples looked at the figure sitting cross-legged in front of them. There was a faint excitement on their faces. The older girl whispered, "Junior Sister Ying, we actually fought side by side with Uncle Master Ling Jizi. I even invited him to hunt wandering souls together." Speaking of that matter, the girl next to her stuck out her tongue and said, "If it weren't for Uncle Master Ling Jizi, we would have all died in the realm of ghosts." Wu Qian said, "I wonder if Uncle Master Ling Jizi still remembers us." After the two of them whispered a few words, they closed their mouths and listened intently to Li Mu's teachings. 2 hours later, the day's teachings ended. Li Mu's figure gradually faded away, but the disciples on the training ground remained where they were for a long time. They were still stuck in the enlightenment they had just experienced. Chen Yingying and Wu Qian had successfully entered the ancestral court not long ago. They were now fourth-generation disciples of Baiyun Mountain. When the two returned to their residence, they suddenly found a figure standing in the courtyard. Seeing that familiar figure, the two's delicate bodies trembled. They immediately went forward and respectfully said, "Greetings, Uncle Master Ling Jizi." Li Mu smiled and said, "You two also came to the ancestral court." When he went to the realm of ghosts for the first time, he met the two by chance. At that time, Chen Yingying was still an outer sect disciple of Fu Lu School, and Wu Qian was a rogue cultivator. Now, looking at their clothes, they were clearly fourth-generation disciples of Fu Lu School. Although the two were women, they were courageous and affectionate. Li Mu still had a deep impression of them. He stretched out his hand, and 2 bottles of pills appeared in his palm. Li Mu handed the pills to them and said, "Meeting again is fate. These 2 bottles of pills are for you. Go into seclusion and refine them. They should be able to help you break through as soon as possible." The 2 women respectfully accepted the pills and said, "Thank you, Uncle Master Ling Jizi." Li Mu looked at them as if he was looking at a junior and said, "Cultivate well. If you have any questions about cultivation, you can ask your Uncle Master Ling Jizi or me." Chen Yingying and Wu Qian nodded respectfully. Even though Wu Qian was actually older than Li Mu, when facing him, she couldn't help but feel the admiration of a junior towards an elder. After a short chat with the 2 women, Li Mu planned to leave. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked at the distant horizon. At the end of the northern horizon, a black line suddenly appeared. Li Mu's eyes flashed with a golden light. He saw that at the end of his line of sight, the originally clear and cloudless sky was now covered by dark clouds. The clouds covered the sky and the sun. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Black dragons swam in the dark clouds. They were wrapped by the dark clouds and swept towards the direction of White Cloud Mountain. The dark clouds were extremely fast. From the time Li Mu saw the black line to the time when the dark clouds flew above White Cloud Mountain, it only took a dozen breaths. When the dark clouds enveloped White Cloud Mountain, it was followed by an extreme pressure. At this moment, everyone in the ancestral court of White Cloud Mountain, from the low-level disciples to the elders of the peaks, felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on their hearts. They couldn't breathe. More than 10 black dragons emerged from the dark clouds and circled above White Cloud Mountain. The scene was spectacular and oppressive. One of the black dragons opened its mouth, and Ao Feng's voice rumbled out. "Li Mu, you little thief, and that old fellow who drew talismans, come out." Li Mu and Fu Daozi immediately flew into the sky. Then, Tian Jizi, Yuzhen Zi, and the other 2 Grand Supreme Elders also quickly rushed over. Looking at the black dragon race that was completely stunned, Li Mu said indifferently, "Do you think that you're the only ones who know how to bully with numbers?" Li Mu shot 5 arrows in a row, exhausting all the magic power in his body. Then, he flew to the side and quietly recovered his magic power, leaving the battlefield to the others. The dragon clan was indeed the only ancient beast clan that had survived. Their innate abilities were extremely powerful, and their physical bodies were also incomparably powerful. In a situation where their magic power was about the same, it would take two human powerhouses of the same level to deal with them. However, even without Li Mu, there were still 18 7th Realm cultivators here. Fu Daozi alone could fight the Black Dragon race's Great Elder alone, while the rest of the cultivators could deal with one 7th Realm cultivator with 3 people. In addition, Li Mu's 5 arrows had already depleted a lot of 7th Realm cultivators. The situation inside the Dao Bell was almost one-sided. Talisman Daozi's body was surrounded by golden runes, suppressing Ao Feng. He said loudly, "Four-legged snake, I still lack a mount. If you are willing to become my mount, I will spare your life today. How about it?" Ao Feng said coldly, "Don't even think about it. The dragon clan will never be slaves." He let out a long roar, and his 2 dragon horns flickered. A ball of lightning condensed between his dragon horns. This ball of lightning was black, and as the ball of lightning condensed, the black color on Ao Feng's body even became lighter. Almost instantly, the ball of lightning flashed in front of Fu Daozi. He wanted to teleport away, but he was entangled by Ao Feng's dragon tail and couldn't move at all. At this moment, he felt a strong sense of danger. At the critical moment, Fu Daozi's figure suddenly disappeared, and Ao Feng's dragon tail entangled Ao Lei, one of the 4 great elders of the Black Dragon clan. Fu Daozi's figure appeared in Ao Lei's position. Li Mu released the hand seal, and the little bit of spiritual power that he had just recovered was used up again. Li Mu knew the divine powers of the Dragon clan better than any of the dragons here. Ao Feng sacrificed part of his cultivation to this divine ability, and it was not something that Fu Daozi could resist. Although the ball of lightning couldn't destroy his soul, it could destroy his physical body and severely injure his primordial spirit. At this time, even if Yu only used the simplest summoning wind and rain, the severely injured Fu Daozi would be in danger of dying completely. With no other choice, Li Mu could only use Shadow Shift to switch his position with Ao Lei's, allowing him to dodge the attack. The ball of lightning landed on Ao Lei's body and exploded instantly. Ao Lei's body was flashing with lightning. Even though he had a strong body of the Dragon clan, his body was badly mutilated, and his scales peeled off. His aura was extremely weak, and he couldn't even stay in the air and fell heavily. Ao Lei. His memories had been forcefully erased, and he had received another person's memories. This person's identity was a trusted subordinate of Xian Ming from 10,000 years ago. Back then, not only did the Demon Dao ancestors inherit their memories, but also their own trusted subordinates. He was under Xian Ming's orders to sow discord between the Black Dragon race and Li Mu. As the strongest dragon race in the 4 seas, becoming enemies with the Black Dragon race was almost equivalent to provoking another Xuanzong. However, even Xian Ming didn't know that the method Li Mu had originally prepared for them had coincidentally been used here. He waved his hand and threw that ball of light to Ao Feng. "A bunch of stupid dragons. Take a look for yourselves." When he saw that ball of light, Ao Feng felt that something was amiss. At this moment, he scanned the ball of light with his divine consciousness. Scenes of Ao Wu's memories flashed before his eyes. These memories didn't belong to Black Dragon Ao Wu at all. They belonged to an old monster whose memories had been passed down for 10,000 years. He had taken over Ao Wu's body and even instigated a war between the Black Dragon race and the Fulu school. He was the main culprit behind the current situation. After Ao Feng finished reading, he was shocked and furious. He immediately shouted, "Everyone stop!" As soon as he said that, the other 3 black dragons transformed into their human forms and flew to his side. The powerful cultivators of the 5 sects also stopped for the time being. There was no way they could get the sun-shooting bow back. The most important thing now was how the Black Dragon race could save themselves. Although he was also in the wrong, Ao Feng could only push all the blame onto the dead Ao Wu. He looked at Li Mu awkwardly and said, "It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. We have all fallen into the demon's trap." Li Mu sneered and said, "Your entire Black Dragon race has bullied the Fulu school. Do you think you can just say that it's a misunderstanding?" Ao Feng hurriedly said, "It's all our fault. We are willing to pay some compensation." Li Mu's expression softened. Then he said, "Speaking of compensation, I have to settle it with you properly. If you didn't come to White Cloud Mountain, we didn't have to activate the teleportation formation. You have to compensate us 10 times the amount of spirit jades we used to come and go." Ao Feng immediately nodded and said, "It's only right." Li Mu continued, "Fellow Daoists and seniors from the other sects put down their sect matters and teleported here from afar. You have to compensate for the travel expenses and lost time." Although he didn't know what the travel expenses and lost time meant, Ao Feng could only nod in order to thank the Black Dragon race. "That's fine too.